wants you to massage it. It's like, pay attention to me. You're live. Thank you. I appreciate that. Viewers waiting too. All right, we got some people waiting already. We haven't got a line yet. There's already people standing in line. That's good.
All my fans?
Yeah, or hecklers, you know. Hecklers, welcome. You didn't hear that. Actually, of course you didn't hear that. You were live right now. I really don't plan these things very well. What am I doing? What am I doing with this? Okay, so I guess we're going to go live. What do you think? Ready? Okay, cool. Let's do this. Hello, and welcome to the Technocrat Live. I'm your host, Matthew Newhall, and this is my esteemed guest, Lee Wilbur.
You flatter me. Calling me esteemed.
I just bugged out. I thought you had a Bluetooth thing in your head, in your ear.
I can if you'd like.
No, I mean, you know, I was just like, wow, he's super Borg, man. He's like even Borg on the air. So, hey everybody, what's up? How's it going? I'm still rearranging my windows here a little bit. Lee, would you mind while I poke at my electronic doodad thingamabobs, telling everybody a little bit about yourself? I like to give people a kind of a heads up of what they're in for. You know, I mean, they don't really know, but you know, like a brief idea of how doomed they are watching this. My cursed podcast. The cursed podcast.
I don't know. I do IT consulting for small businesses and program in a 25 or 30-year-old language now.
A 30-year-old language?
Well, maybe it's pushing 30. Visual Basic.
Visual Basic.
Yeah. You know, Microsoft doesn't support it anymore, but it's there. And
it doesn't. Wait, Microsoft doesn't support Visual Basic anymore?
Not the version that I'm using.
Oh.
And actually, as I understand it, they have dropped VB from the whole .NET programming environment.
Oh no! When did that happen?
I want to say a couple of years ago, but
okay. Yeah, I don't really follow
if you tried looking for information on programming examples in VB.NET, Microsoft has a tendency to have removed them. So you're kind of stuck unless you find other blogs or things like that that can help you out.
Right. So or Windows geeks that know their stuff, like Lee over here. See that? I just plugged it. How's that? You know, he is for hire if you're worthy. Cool. So what do you do for fun?
I don't know. What do I do for fun?
What do you do for fun? Will you talk about computers and sci-fi?
Yeah.
And mayhem.
Yeah, I mean,
you're a philosopher. You're a thinker.
I do a lot of things to kill time these days.
Yeah.
Like listening to a variety of podcasts, and I don't game nearly as much as I would like to. I have a Steam account with like 30 games in it that I've played maybe for 30 hours in the last 5 years. So what's that, 6 hours a year?
It's good.
That's good?
No, it's not good.
I think
it actually probably is good, because if you played more, you might not get anything else done. It tends to be like that, right? It's either like you dabble enough to know how it works, or it kills you. You know, they make it addictive on purpose. They do that.
Yes. Well, I was addicted to the SimCity Android game for quite a while, and I finally cut that out. So.
Right. Okay.
Cool. It really wasn't very good. It put the techniques in there that I knew what they were, but it was a good time waster.
I know what's happening to me, but it's still fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah. I mean, you know, come on, who doesn't know that gambling isn't bad for them, but people still do it, you know? And yeah, sure, some people are addicts, but some people, they just, like, it's a good way to pass the time. I don't know if it is, but.
When I was in Vegas, the only reason I gambled was because Caesars gave me a $10 voucher, which I promptly used in slot machines and walked away with $4.13.
I won $20. You know what I spent it on? When I went to Atlantic City.
One soda?
A cigar.
Okay.
Yeah, that was it. Just one cigar.
Well, 25 years ago when I went to Atlantic City with some friends, I did win $200 on a nickel slot.
Nice.
Yeah.
You know what's weird about it? Is I actually walked through, like I was like some kind of dowser through all the slot machines, and I'm like, that one. And I sat down at it, $20. I only put like a bet $1.
I put
hell yeah.
I tried $20 in blackjack and I lost it in about 20 seconds, and I said, okay, I'm not doing this again.
Hello, Ariella. Thanks so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. The secret bunker in the Bourbon State. And yeah, they did drop VB about 2 years ago, which is exactly what Lee said. And Ariella says, hi, Lee. And
Hello.
Also, for fun, she's right, Lee plays Cards Against Humanity.
Yes.
But you need other
Yes, you need other people to
so-called
play.
humans for that.
Yeah, well, what is it? Horrible people. You need horrible people for that.
You need horrible people. Are you horrible people? You might be in for a treat then. Yeah, because this could be hard. This could be a horrible podcast.
Are you expecting more people in a card game? I've got them in my car.
Yeah, I mean, we could just play Cards Against Humanity. Let me know in the comments if you guys want me to have a Cards Against Humanity live. I've actually been thinking about it. It's a little cramped in this room, but I think we could do it. I think we could get maybe 6 people. I think we can get 6 people. There's a second table that moves over, so yeah, we could do it. It would be interesting, and bonus, you get to watch all the technical snafus as I screw everything up with the actual broadcast part of it. And by the way, hey James, thanks for tuning in, and hey Rich, thanks so much for tuning in. I appreciate it. I assume you're tuned in, James. He's sneaking around offline, but we won't. Guess I can. Holy cow, Rich! Wow. Rich says, guess I can toss my 1.2. Are you kidding? 1.2 million lines of V code. He's exaggerating. He must be exaggerating. That can't be real. Do you really need to write 1.2? Is that just Hello World?
Well, I mean, it depends on what you're programming.
Right. Yeah, I know he had some client-facing apps. They still support that. I don't know.
I mean, the project that I tend to be working with, I'm not entirely sure how much code is in it. I did look it up at one point. I don't remember. If I had to guess, it's probably like 150,000 lines.
Right.
I did count it the other day. It was 36 modules and 72 forms.
Right.
And I'd love to reduce that, but.
Well, but I mean, honestly, I'd rather have it be more modular. Whatever it is, whatever. Like I've written a pretty hefty pile of code, and the more modular it was, the happier I was. In fact, I spent a lot of my time reworking things so they were even more modular, so you could reuse pieces.
Well, but my point is that when I've looked over this code, there are some areas that made very little sense to me because they were, let's say, 300 lines of code 4 times, and if you compared them, each subroutine was like 300 lines of code. Mm-hmm. You compared them, and maybe there was 10 lines that were different between them.
Okay, got it.
Which you can fix.
Which is screaming for, to modularize.
Yeah, turn that into one single procedure that you pass some variables to, and you can go from 1,200 lines of code to 320.
By the way, Rich says, not kidding, so I have built a pile of scripts, which I'm making it sound bad, but it actually was kind of an engineering feat. And it was about 10 to 15,000, 20,000 lines of code? It was a lot. It was around that, tens of thousands of lines of code. Mostly in Bourne Shell, although there was some Python mixed in there too. And that was per request, and that was pretty difficult.
There's a VB script I have written that the file is 220K. I don't remember how many lines of code. I'm going to guess it's somewhere around 5,000 or 6,000.
Wow. Yeah, to me that's senior work. When you get up into the thousands of lines of code for something that's production and has to integrate with other components, that's senior work. It may not, it may be your first senior thing, but it's senior work. Yeah. And Rich says he's not kidding. 1.2 million. My God, man. One day, I promise I won't steal your stuff because I don't even know what I'm doing with VB. I'd love to see just a flow chart of the basic components and what they do. Jeez, man, Rich, you're hardcore.
Well, if you want some work, Rich, contact me because I can use some help.
Cool. Apparently Lee is drowning. So, hey, if you're new to the podcast, please like, love, share, and subscribe. I really love it when people subscribe. I like it when you guys comment. I want to see what you guys have to say. That makes me happy. That's my thing. I want to interact with you. Of course, if you subscribe, then you can come back and comment again and again and again. If somebody's talking spank about you in the comments, it can happen. Horrible people. It does happen. We're all technocrats here. Yuck, yuck, yuck. So it's not so easy for the normies when they're in our presence. But also, so please subscribe and comment. It's really the thing that matters the most to me. The reason I want you to comment is because I'm pretty weird. I actually like other people's opinions. Like, I want to hear stories. I don't want to just, like, you'd be like, oh, Matt just likes to talk and hear himself, right? That'd be like an easy joke. But, like, I'm not doing that for this. I think I know lots of people that I want to talk to for 3 hours and rack their brains and find out what it is that they think, what it is they're up to, how they see the world, because not everything can be explained in a tweet, I mean, things are more complicated than that sometimes.
It's a good thing you feel that way, because with me, you may have to pull it out of me. I'll tell you whatever you want to know, but I'm not going to volunteer it until you ask.
Yeah. No, that's good. I mean, I kind of knew that. So we have a really big dystopia report. I have a moderate set of questions for you, but they're big, they're deep. So, hey, and if you guys have any questions for Lee, please pass them along, and I will ask them. Ariel, I'm writing a Python program, all the functions with a main auto-config switches, over 1,500 lines of code. Awesome, good for you, nice. So not all the network people out there can code at all, and not all the people in IT can code. And you used to be one of them, right? You used to not be able to code yourself.
Well, I've always done...
You would tell people that. I don't know if it was true or not. But.
I never considered myself a programmer. Probably until about 6 years ago, where I still kind of... I'll call myself a programmer, but I won't put myself on the level of people who use modern languages.
I can't believe what a terrible host I am. I'm sitting here drinking coffee from you. I didn't even offer you coffee. Would you like some coffee?
No, I'm okay.
You sure?
Yeah.
Would you like some water or some wine?
Oh, if you had a bottle of water, I'd be happy for that.
I'll get you a bottle of water. Hold on. So, and as soon as we finish our quick adjournment with a bottle of water, I'm going to walk over to the Technocrat fridge over here.
It's a naked bottle of water.
A naked bottle of water, and I am positive nobody drank from this, but I will give you from a pitcher just to be safe. I don't want to seem like I'm strange here. This is tap water. So. There you go.
What's the water quality in this area of Long Island?
Freeport? I think it's good. I haven't had a problem. I've been drinking it here, and no problems, but, sorry about that.
Well, on the bright side, it's only 1, maybe 2 cups, so I should live.
Yeah, that's true. You probably will live. As far as I know, there aren't any nuclear reactors. Shoreham might have been, but no, that's farther out. No.
And on the other shore.
On the other shore. Fair enough. So, yeah. Okay. So, without further ado, let's get into Dystopia Report. And you know how this works, right? In Dystopia Report, you
more
just
or
jump
less.
in there.
Yeah.
Like if you that's bullshit. Tell me. I want to know. You guys too. If you think it's a lie. I'm looking for the. I have to admit, I know a couple of geeks, a couple of who have been on the show, and doesn't Lee love Diet Coke? Yeah, I don't have any Diet Coke.
No, actually, I'm more of a Diet Pepsi person.
What? Diet Pepsi, you see? And people are picky about that, right? They just they want this one or that one, not the other one.
I will drink Diet Coke, but I should also kind of avoid as much caffeine as I can.
Right.
So I will not drink Diet caffeine-free Pepsi. Diet caffeine-free Coke. I think the stuff tastes absolutely horrible. The Diet caffeine-free Pepsi, I actually do like. I'm not going to say it's the best drink in the world or anything. It's not, but I'll drink it.
Right. Got it. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, why not the caffeine? I mean, caffeine is the nectar of the gods, isn't it?
I get enough caffeine from other places.
We're fighting over caffeination. Is there such a thing? Can you really have over caffeination? I don't know. So Dystopia Report. So let's get into it. By the way, what I wanted to say before is, I mean, sometimes I get it wrong. Like I got this LK. You hear about LK99? So I did like a 1-hour shtick on the show during Dystopia Report about the importance of superconductors and what it's going to do to society, because I really thought LK99 was the bomb. Apparently a lot of people did. Like it went up 20, 30, like stocks related to superconductors went up like 20, 30%. while that thing, during those 3 days that people thought that was legit and looked legit. And the thing that was really important about it was normal manufacturing techniques. By the way, it still was possible. It may even be possible with those materials, but not that manufacturing technique. That was the problem. So, but yeah, we're gonna have like a soda. I gotta tell you, man, soda is really bad for you. And like,
Yeah.
well, must be true. Yeah, I mean, I used to work at a .com, and they had a whole fridge. They had like, tech culture is unreal. I mean, it really is. It really is like my mascot here with the tuxedo and the wine glass. I mean, I worked at a .com. They had a full kitchen, and it wasn't the only one. I'd worked at multiple companies like that, where they just give you food, like whatever you want. And I would drink soda, and they'd be like, "What are you doing? Soda's garbage."
Yet they provided it.
They would rather you drank wine on the job. They were like, "That's healthier." I'm like, "What?" And then, you know what? They were right. They're totally right. My body just rejected it one day. I couldn't drink it anymore. Like before I started getting fit, like I got fit a few years ago. Like if you look at old episodes, you'll see I'm a lot heavier. But like, I was still drinking soda at the beginning of the show, and right like a few months after I started the show, I couldn't drink it anymore. It just my body would go, "Nope, we're not doing that," and I'd be like stomach pain, and I just couldn't. It's crazy. Oh, Jen, hi Jen, thanks for tuning in. Diet Coke restaurants ask for if it's Coke or Pepsi. If it's Pepsi, I'll take water. Yeah, you know, I was thinking of exactly that, and it's crazy. Like people are religious about their diet soda. And
well, my opinion, the best tasting diet soda is Dr. Pepper.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting.
And I know more than one person who has said that as well.
Really? Maybe I'll stock some Diet Dr. Pepper in case somebody wants some Diet soda. I don't know. I have a whole fridge. I have a full-size fridge here, and it's barely got anything in it. I'm kind of a crazy person. Anyway, all right. Well,
but to your point about tech companies and soda and fridges.
Yeah.
When I would go out to Seattle and Microsoft's offices, every building has multiple areas with well-stocked refrigerators with just about every major soda brand there was. And you just walk up and take one. No problem.
Right. Yeah. I mean, because you know why?
Caffeine.
Well, caffeine.
Programmers need to be awake.
Hydration, caffeine, and if you don't have that fridge there, they're going to walk to the corner store or hop in their car and drive up the block, and that's 20, 30 minutes.
Well, no, they'll call for a car, but yeah.
I mean, they could have gone out for a pot break. You know, yes,
Microsoft's campus has its own car service.
Not me. I never did it. I never smoked weed or any drugs or anything on the job, but a lot of people did. They go out in the parking lot, have a joint. Like, okay, I guess that makes it code better. I didn't get fired, so I guess it did. Whatever. Diet Dr. Pepper Cherry is the best. How are we even talking about this? I love this conversation. See, this is how you know this is a real interview show, because it's just going wherever the fuck it goes. You know, like that's. And by the way, we curse on here too. It's PG-13. You've been warned. So
I'm waiting for you.
Politics either, so no political names.
I'm waiting for you to turn it into an R-rated event.
An R-rated event.
I'm not going to do that today, but I'm waiting for you to do that.
Oh yeah. Well, I basically tell my guests anything's legit, except for like full frontal or crazy violence. You know, so. I mean, even even knife throwing contests and stuff like that. That was a regular in Area 22.
Although, in fairness, if you go watch the original version of the movie Airplane, it's PG rated, but there is nudity.
Okay. Well, I mean, was it a dog? I mean, you know.
No, woman topless.
A topless woman.
Yeah, going through the security.
Really? What movie is this?
Airplane.
I didn't get it. How did Airplane get PG with a topless woman?
Because it was released, I think, in 1981, and PG-13 didn't come around until like 84.
Oh, right. So they had to do the split between kids can't go to it at all.
Yeah.
And okay, I get that. But also, hey, PG movie with a topless woman. Can't go wrong there. Kombucha, we got Fresca, Moxie soda. It's like a beverage fest. I feel like I need a serving tray.
Diet Dr. Brown Black Cherry isn't bad either.
And just for the record, this is all inside the Dystopia report, right? You know, it's like Inception, right? Like you get on the show, and you gotta like listen carefully, or you don't know if you're in the Dystopia report or not. And I mean, like I could like put like a little logo up or something, but I like that people have to hunt around to figure out if they're...
carbonated water is a superconductor, is it not?
Well, everything's a superconductor if you make it cold enough, apparently.
There you go.
Yeah, I don't know. No, it's not true, actually. Some things are still insulators, but a lot of things are, if you make them zero, the electrons just kind of coast in between the atoms, you know? But that isn't really helpful. It's the room temperature part. That's the important part. Who cares? Dr. Brown sodas are delish. You mean the diet or the regular? Because I think the regulars are, I don't know. I think they're delicious, but I can't have them. So, I don't know. Are you allowed to think things are delicious you can't have? It's kind of weird. Like, I feel like then people are going to be like, if I tell people that, then they're going to give me Dr. Brown's. I'm like, I don't want to drink it because it's soda. But yeah, I have blood. I actually like black cherry a lot, you know. Dr. Brown's black cherry a lot. Why am I telling you that? I don't know. What is wrong with me? Okay, all right, I'm stopping this. We're not talking about juniors. That's it. It's a local restaurant. This is madness. How did this get out of control? It's you. It's Lee. I know what's going on.
I'll take credit.
Hi, Melissa. Thanks for tuning in. Mango Chill, Bacardi, and Tropo Chico, and a splash of pineapple juice is my drink of choice. Yes, Melissa. That is. Now we're getting into mixed drinks. I will have a bar here. I mean, I've been doing wine in the past because it was simple. But I mean, there's no reason I can't actually do cocktails. This is supposed to be a cocktail, not a wine glass.
If you get the appropriate ingredients, and I'll try an adios motherfucker if you can make it.
An adios motherfucker.
Yes.
Nice.
It's kind of like a Long Island iced tea, but different.
All right. So, you know what? Maybe I'll try to do a panel. I'll wait till I have the bar. I'm going to do panels here eventually. I'll wait till I have the bar in place, and I'll invite you and Paul to a panel on the show. And Paul's like, he knows his stuff around. He knows his way around the bar. So he probably already knows how to make it. In fact, the only thing that could go wrong is he might lambaste me for not having sufficient ingredients.
I had a great one in Prague. I had a horrible one in Melville.
What about ring dings? They were great 25 years ago. Now the ring dings are awful. You know, I think a lot of, I remember there was McDonald's used to be good. Like, I don't know how to.
McDonald's? I've never liked McDonald's.
When I was a kid, it was just burgers. It was just burgers on buns. And I mean, like, they still had the whole assembly line thing, but it was food. It hasn't been food in a long time. So, yeah, I mean, everything was good back then. Snowballs. Those were good. I like those. AMF took me out. We should dedicate an entire show to juniors? I'm not dedicating a show to juniors. How is that technical? I mean, like, how is that going to help us with the dystopia?
If you do an entire show on their point of sale system and how hackable it is, then that could work.
Oh, yeah. I like what you did there. We're getting into the hackability.
Or how the company, how the restaurant can be socially engineered to give up all their information.
We could get to a show on how to get free food at Juniors. Oh, look at that. Yeah, got your attention now, didn't I? You're like, yeah, I want to go to Juniors. Too bad I don't have the money for it. Doesn't matter now because you watch the Technocrat live. Free food, free everything. Technocrats, elites. All right. Anyway, so let me put my Coke bottle glasses on. Because my eyes are falling out of my head. Tech. So there is a WinRAR 0 day. I don't know if you've heard about this, but WinRAR is a protocol that is a compression protocol, and it is typically installed on Windows machines as an app for RAR 4, which is what WinRAR is used for. It's a pretty popular one.
I would argue with that.
There's not a 0 day?
No, that it's pretty popular. It's pretty popular amongst the crowd that would be interested in putting a 0 day in it. I have not used WinRAR in probably 20 years.
Wow.
Okay. 7-zip will open RAR files.
Right.
And most things aren't packaged in them anyway.
Right. So if you have okay, so good point. So actually, if you're an amateur in the audience, you're not like a full-on technocrat or not a computer technocrat, so to speak. Yeah, you should definitely check your system and make sure you don't have WinRAR on there. And if you do, update it. This doesn't really affect Mac and Linux because those typically use another app. that will come. There's an unrar utility that's open source and comes with Linux. Mac has a similar thing. Microsoft is actually working on one. So in a short while, for Windows 11, they announced it, but they haven't released it yet. So they kind of almost dodged this. Makes me wonder if somebody was sitting on a 0 day and said, well, may as well take advantage of this while we can. But just in case you don't think this thing's dangerous, we're talking about text files and JPEGs. If you click on a text file or a JPEG, they got you, right? So you're going to think you're totally safe, and it's just going to eat you alive. So don't.
But these days, RAR files generally, the only place I see them is if you're looking through BitTorrent lists and for things that you probably shouldn't be looking for.
Right, yeah. Well, maybe, I mean, everyone's got to start somewhere. Maybe you want to look for that because you're creating a honeypot.
Well, if you're doing something like that.
Research. Well, I would certainly, if you're not aware of this stuff, get aware, because you need to get aware. Because you are our minions, we are the Technocrats, and you are just our lowly peons in a technocratic world. All right, so anyway, that's that. Bleeping Computer if you want to know more, but it's all over the place. Lots of people talking about it. This one's crazy. So the Zoom CEO had said something and it leaked. So it was a company-wide message inside of Zoom and it leaked. And this has been in the news a lot this week, but this is the one that really got me. His name's Eric Yuan. And he said, remote work just ain't, no, he didn't, sorry, this isn't a quote. But yeah, remote work is basically not building their team. So basically he told everybody, hey, we need to start scheduling people to come into the office. And the thing with Zoom is it's not just Zooming, as it's become a verb, but they have a whole suite of tools for doing remote work. They're claiming that they can replace the office, except they can't do it with their own staff. They can't build a team. So yeah, this is a major upset. This is Business Insider if you want to know more. I'm just going to ignore this. It's still talking about restaurants. Feel free, if it circles back around, I will come and pick you guys up, or I will airdrop our conversation back into what you're talking about. So if you can figure out how to circle that back around,
I can circle it back around later.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So it's funny. There's some interesting. This is going to be a good show, by the way. If you're, what is going on here? That's a little weird. Sorry, folks. There's some kind of weird happenings here.
Did you open a RAR file?
I didn't this time. I would, but I didn't this time. Okay. Anyway. So okay. So. Let's go on to the next story. That was pretty interesting. I was kind of hoping that, it's the CEO of Zoom. He had to know when he sent out a company-wide that it was going to leak. Because nobody wants to go into the office if they work for Zoom. That's why they worked for Zoom.
You would hope that he would understand that was likely to happen.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like he hasn't talked to his marketing team in a month. For this to even be possible. Yeah. All right. Anyway, so this is interesting.
I mean, to me, it's kind of like Elon Musk dropping the verification check mark and then selling it. It's like, how could you not know people wouldn't just buy it and create fake accounts?
Right.
So that you had the real Ford instead of Ford.
Right.
Or whatever you want to call it.
So okay, that's actually an interesting topic. What do you think about parody accounts that maybe not everyone knows are a parody? Like, where's this? I mean, obviously, we just talked about Airplane. That's a great movie, right? I mean, I love it. It's a parody, right? So where is the credibility, the culpability, the credibility line for parody? Like, how close to the real thing can you get before it's like, okay, stop. People are going to get fooled by this.
You need to have some sort of disclaimer somewhere in the article, in my opinion, or in the account description that says it's a parody, because people believe anything today.
Right.
People will look at the Onion reports and say, see?
Today?
Yeah.
Or is that new? Or do you think this is how people always were?
No, I mean, before you had fewer publishers.
Right.
Now everybody's a publisher.
Okay. So, well, wait a minute. So, is this maybe just a training problem? So, like in the past, there'd be some kind of editing. I mean, any kind of publication, there was overhead, there was financial risk, there was stakes. So, you had an editor. The editor protected you from wasting your money on a bad stake. But, like, and of course, you know, you don't know if the book's going to be popular, but at least it doesn't have to be total shite, right? You know, it doesn't have to be lying. It doesn't have to create a lawsuit, right? So, you have editors and, you know, a staff to keep an eye on that kind of thing. But now, everybody's a publisher. So is it just everyone's got to get used to the idea that everyone's a publisher? Or...
Look, if you're a responsible person, then you're going to fact check whatever you read.
Of course.
Or hear, or see, or,
well,
you know.
We're technocrats. You know, we always check for bugs in our code.
You know, if you're a responsible person, you're going to do that. There's way too many people out there, and there always have been, who will hear something and... You know, if their friend Bobby said it, then it must be true.
Right. Well, I mean, it depends on who your friend Bobby is. You know, if your friend Bobby's a PhD award-winning scientist with 8
but
papers,
he can get it wrong too.
Of course, yeah. Well, maybe that's the key. So
you know, when I hear things and read things,
if it doesn't have citations, it might be parody.
When I hear things and read things in the news and various other places, it's like, okay, I want to believe that. I want to feel like I can have a really intense, deep discussion with somebody on it. But the simple fact is, I wasn't there first person. I don't know all the details.
Mm-hmm.
So the best I can do is use the information that I have, understanding that it comes at me from somebody who probably didn't even do it themselves.
Right.
They're writing about it, or reporting about it, or whatever.
Right.
So you can't know that the person you're hearing it from is being 100% accurate, and they may think they are.
Right. It could be earnest.
I go back. I think I realized this about almost 30 years ago when I was working at the lab.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you were there at the time.
Okay. We worked together at a lab.
There was an incident, I think it was in 97 or 98.
Mm-hmm. Wasn't there yet.
In Westchester, I believe it was Westchester, a husband and wife who used to be, the husband used to work at Cold Spring, and his wife, I believe she was convicted of dismembering him, throwing him in trash bags on the side of the road in Westchester. And at the time when this first happened, they first found his body, they were looking for her.
What the fuck? I wasn't expecting that. Okay, go on.
After a few days, pleasant story.
PG-13.
After a few days, the wife, who apparently had broken into one of the cabin residences at the lab,
mm-hmm.
was seen in the dining hall and recognized, and they called the police. And she was subsequently arrested. And for a couple of days, it was like the A story on various major news networks.
Yeah, I mean...
Yeah. But the problem was, I was fascinated by this. I went home and I had recorded at least one, and I watched another live, and I watched the reports, and they all said different things. And then I actually spoke to one of the security guys who had a bit more firsthand knowledge, and he told me what really happened, and that was different than what the news was telling everybody. So
we're talking about Gell-Mann amnesia.
I mean...
There's actually a scientific name for this,
okay.
where you see a lack of credibility in the media, and then you just keep believing them.
So from that point forward, I kind of realized that when you're watching the news or reading the news or whatever you're going to get your news from, you really need to just understand that what they're saying is a broad generalization, no matter how specific they try to be.
Right.
You know, this woman was caught there. She's accused of hacking her husband to death. That's what you should take from that story. Not the details that she was doing this, she was hiding there, somebody said this. Forget all that. That's probably BS.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so because of that experience, I don't care what you're reading in Bleeping Computer, which I actually generally like.
Yeah.
Or what you're seeing on CNN, Fox.
Oh, this is one
whatever.
of the reasons. This is one of the reasons I cite the sources. You know.
No, and that's good.
Yeah. Go check it out for yourself because I don't know about these guys.
But my point is that what you're going to hear, whether it's from the news or an article or whatever, unless you were there, unless you were the one conducting the experiment or witnessing the event, and even when you are,
science,
you can't trust that what you're being told is 100% true.
Yeah.
But I don't think you should take it as it's a complete lie either.
Right.
You know, the woman did hack her husband to death. That's true. She was caught there. That's true. The other details,
Right. So apparently this is one of the things that, all right, so this is purely anecdotal. I've gotten it from a couple of sources. But this is one of those things where it's hard to know without, I have not verified this with someone who was living in the USSR at the time when the wall fell. But a couple of years before the wall fell, there came to be like a time of day where they would know as the dog walking hour. I think I might have verified this with Simon. I should have him on the show.
Yeah,
anyway,
you should.
I totally should.
But you'd have to do the show from California.
Yeah, that's true. We never know. He might be he has friends here. So he might pop back.
There is an office for his company in New York City, so.
There is, yes. So he was in Soviet Russia when it was Soviet Russia. And but apparently one of the things that happened is so many people had that Gell-Mann amnesia effect where they just, they had that happen to them one too many times where they didn't have it. They had the Gell-Mann remembering instead of the Gell-Mann amnesia. And they where they just saw stuff that didn't match the news and they just knew they were lying. And it got to the point where there was a lot of social pressure to comply with the government. Like people would rat you out and nobody wanted to be caught complying. So people wouldn't outwardly protest. When the news came on though, they just go out and walk the dog. Well, it became known as the dog walking hour because literally nobody would be inside watching the TV. Like every single neighbor would be outside walking the dog when the news was on because it was a waste of time. But they didn't want to be, and it was their excuse. Oh, the dog had to go. The dog has to go, and I don't care the news is on. The dog had to go. That way if any KGB types are meandering among them, I got a good excuse. So, yeah, it's kind of when the credibility of a society completely collapses, So, and I think that a lot of people are rightly afraid of that right now. But actually, I don't see that. I see us growing. I see us discussing it and seeing it as a problem, and there's debate, and it's not like, there isn't death. Hey, I see you, Ariella. Sorry, I just didn't want to drag your job into the comment you made about your job into the comments there. The chat is being filtered by YouTube. Oh God, I hope not. Well, one thing you can do you can always pop onto Odyssey. I have it open, so I am streaming live on Odyssey right now. Let me just double check and make sure it's healthy. There have been less viewers there. Oh yeah, it is. It's healthy. So if you're ever in a situation where you're watching the show and you're unhappy you think you're being censored, feel free to log into Odyssey and do it there. It seems like people are, centering on YouTube, so that's fine, makes sense. Everybody's got a login there already, but I'm very anti-censorship, and I'm probably going to go more platforms in the future. We've discussed this. I know there's all kinds of things I should be doing, but
dude, I would love to listen to your show more often. I will not leave my phone open to YouTube in the car.
Right.
You get yourself onto a podcast platform that I can just connect with Bluetooth and hit play. You got me.
All right, cool, awesome. It's Mickey D's. They don't like our comments. Not everybody's loving it. You know what? Not everybody's loving everything. So there you go. That's just how it is. Surprise, people have opinions. And I said I wanted to hear them. And if YouTube doesn't want to hear them, need to move to Rumble. Everyone tells me what platform I should be on, but every platform I add adds a little bit of work at the beginning and the end, and that's if it goes well. If the stream gets interrupted, it could easily turn into 10 minutes if I had 3 or 4 platforms trying to recover just to get back on the air. So I don't want to. I'm hesitating because I've hit maximum chaos in my life already. I'm trying to like not to add more until I have there's a whole vector of control that's coming. I mean, I'm pretty sad about it. I mean,
You need to get a producer in.
My life's
falling
falling apart.
Just get a guy sitting over there in a chair, working the board for you.
Yeah. Well, Steve was I used to have a producer and an engineer when I was at Area 22, and I loved it. But I mean, I just I can't maintain that. You know, it's just not. It's not maintainable. But it doesn't mean I can't solve this with technology. We are geeks, so. And so far, so good. I mean, like, you could have argued I couldn't have done this stuff now, what I'm doing. So
it always amuses me how IT people will try to put on an event, put on a presentation, and the technical issues that they will have to start.
Well, I don't know if you guys have ever done a demo, man, but just don't do a demo. Just record what you would have done for the demo. Talk about the problems you had, and then at the end, if you're really friendly with everyone in the audience and there's no financial stake whatsoever, you can do a demo. Don't do demos. Your comments are being filtered by YouTube. Probably. I'm so sorry. I can't see them. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna, if what you're writing is sane, I'm gonna, not political. Basically, I'll try to give you a little comment and repeat it. So I think that's a fair bet that you are indeed being sensitive. You know what? This is not political because I'm not using names, but we are going into election season. YouTube seems to have anointed themselves the censor of last resort for election season. So if it's any of it's vaguely political, that might be why. All right, so let's get into the next story. It's about Parmesan. So
the cheese, I hope.
The Parmesan cheese. It is actually the cheese. So it's interesting. Parmigiano makers have now been into, or 1 year into a project where they're putting chips in their cheese wheels. They're 20-pound cheese wheels. If you don't know, Parmesan cheese comes from a specific place in Italy, and if it isn't from that place, it ain't Parmesan cheese. But everybody puts Parmesan cheese on the labels on there. So they're trying to do this brand purity thing. So they're putting chips now in their cheese wheels. It's kind of interesting. So I think, to me, this is news because these chips, typically Parmesans will age from 1 to 3 years for it to be called Parmesan cheese. And they've been putting these chips into the cheese wheels for a year. So now they're starting to circulate. Like you're starting to see hundreds of thousands of cheese wheels circulate with these chips in them. So,
will they work in my HP printer?
They probably will work better than your HP printer, because not only are they've been tested to cold temperatures of they're like RFID chips, but it's a different standard. It's a much tougher chip. So RFIDs can break and not work right.
Something a little stronger than a Dorito, then.
Yeah, a little stronger than anything I've ever heard of. Apparently, they'll sit in stomach acid for up to a week. So they're digestible, they won't poison you. There's no leakage on the chips. So, and they only cost them a few cents per cheese wheel. So,
I'd love to see the nutritional value on it.
I know, right? Do they have to list that in the ingredients? Microchip, that would be very interesting. They insist this consortium of chip makers of cheese makers, cheese. I don't know, what is it now? Is it technology or food? Insist that you can't be tracked. You need to basically be right on top of the chip to keep track of the chip. But they do put them on. They do have them on a blockchain so that people can, without any interference, all go onto the blockchain and verify the chip is that cheese is indeed from Parmigiano and where it is. So they actually, different companies, so like wines have this problem, like champagne's from Champagne, France. You can have sparkling wine, but if it's champagne, it's got to be from France. But lots of companies just ignore this and call it champagne anyway. But they're not supposed to, at least not in Europe. I don't know how the international rules are with this, but and even the United States does this too. And you guys will appreciate this. Bourbon must be from the United States. So they were mentioning before that they're from bourbon country. Bourbon is a United States thing. So if you see bourbon and it isn't from the United States, it's not bourbon. So and typically in the Kentucky region. in that part around the Mississippi area. All right. So anyway, so this is they've tried different food manufacturers who are trying to keep their brand sane. They're trying QR codes. They're doing RFID. And this is the crazy one. That some of the wines are doing DNA fingerprinting. So they're actually verifying the DNA of the wines. But compared to this chip thing, these things all sound either very defeatable or very expensive. You know, so this is kind of cool. I think this might go somewhere. I think this might become the standard, and for verifying, you know, products. And the best part about it is there's no government. You know, you don't need some giant bureaucracy. I mean, yes, you can go to the government and say they're breaking the rules, you know, but you don't need the government to actually keep track of this stuff. So if your government's at the lunch, you can kind of do weights and measures without them, which is one of the main roles of any government. So, you know, making sure everything's being measured fairly and so forth.
Proper serving size of your Parmesan cheese.
Proper origin of your Parmesan cheese, that it wasn't made in, you know, I don't know, Brazil. You know, just, I don't know, Brazil has a counterfeit Parmesan cheese market. That's kind of interesting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Look it up. Let me know.
We can start one.
And by the way, if you know me personally and you want to, like, you know, send me private messages or something because you're getting censored, that's okay. I get that too. So oh yeah. Yeah, okay, so I had the keywords that were being filtered. Thank you. I was just about to suggest privately texting me, and I'm actually not going to say them because I don't think I need to, but it involves unreal information transfer. Let's just say that. So, yeah, don't try to avoid those 2 words if you can. Just because I want to hear what you have to say. I don't want you guys to get booted off. And if it's really important and you don't know me, feel free to log into the live stream on Odyssey and comment there. I'm not going to put up with it. I'm not going to just let them run me over like this. And speaking of verifying products, NFTs are really broken. So there's a feature that I didn't understand about NFTs, and like, I thought it was part of the code implementation for NFTs. A lot of NFTs on Ethereum, you know, they're on that blockchain. I thought it was part of the code that if a creator wanted to be tipped every time their particular NFT was sold, that they would be, that it was enforced. Like, it was like enforced in code, like in code we trust. And it's not. Apparently, the reason that a lot of creators were being tipped when they created NFTs and the NFTs transferred hands was because there was a major exchange or market, an exchange that everyone used, and they just changed the rules and they said now it's optional to tip. So I don't understand. I mean, I guess the people in the NFT world, me included, I mean, I didn't buy or sell or promote NFTs at all. I thought they were interesting. I think it's an interesting concept, an interesting way to get a benefactor if you don't want to have to count on like an old school, like, say, record label kind of distribution network. But damn, I mean, that sucks. Yeah, I mean, imagine your life, you know, making your whole life strategy work around NFTs. Kind of screwed now. So yeah, on the other hand, you know, this is could be a reasonably easy thing to do for people to for the next generation of NFTs, if they call it something else or if it's NFT still, to get it right. I mean, this seems like a no-brainer. They shouldn't have done it this way. It should have been enforced on the blockchain. All right, anyway, so that's it for tech. Let's get on to tech government. So Massachusetts, right to repair. I have a right to repair law in Massachusetts. I've covered it before. Also, the NHTSA, which is the National Highway and Transportation Authority, has
Safety Administration
has said yes. Well, you would know because you just dealt with some of you just checked out some of this stuff at Defcon. I covered it when they said, "Oh, by the way, we don't want you to enforce this law, state." You know, and they went, "What? We're doing it anyway." So now the NHTSA has come back out and said, quote, automakers can safely share diagnostic data with independent mechanics using short-range and wireless technology. long-range wireless signals, aka your fucking telematics unit in your car, which I've been warning you about, though that part was me. That wasn't the fucking part was me. Could potentially allow hackers to send dangerous commands to moving vehicles. So if you didn't take me seriously before on car hacking being a real threat to your life and your livelihood and society's health, well, now the guys that make the standards that your car has to live up to say it is. I mean, it isn't DARPA anymore. Now it's everybody. You can't buy an oil filter without these guys okaying it. I mean, come on. When are you gonna take this seriously? Anyway, this is from TechCrunch, but but the good news is, at least for originally they had said nope, you can't enforce this law to Massachusetts, and it actually goes into force yesterday or 2 days ago or something, and now they're saying yes, this law is totally valid except if it's revealing code that does long-term transmission. So way better than shutting off the entire CAN bus to mechanics. Now it's just the part of the code in the telematics unit that basically uses the cell phone networks to connect to phone home and give away your driving data for free like it has no value. Obviously it has value. The insurance companies are willing to pay for it. I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer. So yeah, let me just I have to have a message signal. Here we go. No, that's not new. But I'll keep paying attention. Yeah, so you don't be discouraged if you have another whatever method you want to communicate with me. Feel free to communicate that way. I'm not going to let censorship get in between us. Also, Fukushima and tech government. I'm going to call this tech government, even though it is the management authority of the cleanup project. It is really the Japanese government. And let's be real here. They're the ones pulling the strings. Has basically said, yeah, we're going to be dumping millions of dollars of tritium water into the ocean, and it's kind of an interesting, interesting referendum, if nothing else, on Hong Kong, because Hong Kong is considering banning food imports now from Japan, and apparently they're not the only one. South Korea and China already do this, based on their on how they're handling this. Greenpeace is also pissed off. How pissed off is debatable, but so here's the upside, which is that the water has been very heavily treated, and the radiation levels in the water are very, very low. But there is a specific problem with this kind of water, even if most of the radioactive material has been filtered out of it. Any radioactive material that remains is original radioactive material. In other words, it comes from a radioactive element which is in a radioactive state and is, in other words, known as hot particles. And if you ingest one of those hot particles because some fish ingested it, it's never going to leave your body. You're going to be continually bombarded with radiation for the duration of its half-life, which in the case of tritium is way longer than your lifetime. So, yeah, there's basically no way to get it out once it's in. So, yeah, I kind of understand why Hong Kong is doing this. The question is, who's really in charge in Hong Kong? Is it China? Is it the locals in Hong Kong? I mean, they still have some autonomy. Supposedly, they're still independent, and nobody really buys that anymore. China's in charge there. There was a bunch of protests. They basically got squashed. So I don't know if they're the best. There's also some outcry in Japan.
I mean, they're more independent than Beijing, but not as independent as Taiwan.
Right. Well, Taiwan is, that's.
Well,
do you know about this? This is an interesting thing. Let's piss everyone off today. No one's gonna watch your show because we're gonna get censored in China too. So there's an interesting thing in China. Stop me if you know this or don't know this. So apparently, if you go far enough back in the royal lineage of Taiwan, the history of the royal lineage and their relation to Taiwan, apparently Taiwan is the ruling land. That's where the palace is supposed to be located. So China doesn't really have a complete kind of legal chain of custody to their ruling class. without, I mean, yeah, I know it's communism. There's no ruling class bullshit. It's ruling class, but to the royal line in Taiwan. So theoretically, there could be a throne claim from Taiwan. They could use that as a justification for war if they wanted to launch an attack on China. At this point, I don't think anybody's really worried about Taiwan attacking China. I think it's the other way around. But yeah. Anyway, here we go. That's why I'm getting an early 70s Roadrunner, no computers. By the way, Ariella, I see 2 messages where it says message retracted from you. I'm just curious. Just tell me, say the word pickles if message retracted means that your message was censored, or just say no, that was me if it was you that deleted. I'm very curious to see if your messages are being yanked, because YouTube's making it look like you yanked your own message. I'm kind of curious. Like, thanks for debugging with me. This is kind of fun. So yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I don't know. I just also I'm totally pro nuclear power as long as it's modern nuclear power. Fukushima was always going to go. They put a Type 1 reactor next to the water, in a fault zone. What? Why? No, don't do that. But reactors are safe, just not that kind in that place. So
faulty thinking.
Faulty thinking. Yeah. Problem. It's a problem is between keyboard and chair. Problem. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, on to AI. So AI. Hollywood has partially accepted, has come up with a proposal and partially accepted the term of the actors. The problem is the actors there's an actor's strike, of course, and a writer's strike. Of course, the problem is that they walked out 2 hours into the renegotiation. But the proposal is kind of interesting. It has to do with if you don't know why they are, no, I removed them, spelling mistakes, and I am for Type 4 reactors. I am for Type 4 reactors. Yeah, even 3+ are fine. They're fine. 3+ or Type 4 will absolutely run on their own without any human intervention. I think that's the standard. Like, nobody has to push a button. So if something happens to the people, the reactor doesn't immediately just go topside and start spilling radiation into the environment. Right? You don't need to sit there, because that's a problem we learned with Chernobyl too. I mean, Fukushima as well. But like, when a reactor goes nuclear, nobody wants to or even can be there very long. So you quickly filter through the experts that are willing to endanger their own lives, and then you have this thing that's spinning out of control and no one can go near it. That's the real problem. And so if the reactor could just maintain itself on its own, a lot of that problem is solved. Just that alone. No logistics problems, supply line problems, no personnel problems. Thanks, I appreciate that. I was curious if they were misdirecting me. Anyway, so yeah, I'm absolutely for Type 4 reactors. Type 4 reactors are awesome, and Type 3+ too. 3+ as well. Okay, so anyway, so back to the whole Hollywood proposal. So the thing that Hollywood proposed, they proposed higher pay, longer contracts, but interestingly, apparently they now accepted a clause with a lot of wiggle room, and I think that may be the problem. Like, it isn't clear what the limit is, like how much of it, if there is a limit. But apparently, if a script is partially written by AI, so this is the writer's portion, the writer will not be docked. So if you have a writer that's being paid for a movie, and part of the movie is written by artificial intelligence or machine learning as we really know it, that the writer will still get the credit, right? And Copyright Office has been all over this and said AI can never have copyright. So maybe this is just Hollywood covering their own ass, because they don't want to lose the copyrights on whatever it is they wrote, because if the writer isn't, because it's an original, it's on film, the film part's copyrighted too, but the story might not be, right? So if it gets out that it was entirely AI created, it's not theirs, it's everybody's. So that may be what they're really up to. I'm not sure. And in Hollywood land, the extras. Oh, I got a comment from Jen. In Hollywood land, the extras and body doubles should be concerned about AI. Unfortunately, they will probably be easily replaced. Yeah, well, I mean that's part of it. Right now, that hasn't really happened. Although apparently somebody tried to make a movie with James Dean, like a modern movie, you know, with his image and his voice. So that's pretty amazing. Anyway, so that's the state of that. You can CBS News if you want to learn more. IBM did a survey. This is kind of interesting. So they're expecting a 40% career role turnover due to AI. So they're expecting in the next this is over the course of 3 years. Now, of course, just for a disclaimer, IBM sells AI products. You know, they have a variety of artificial intelligence and machine learning products that they can hawk to you. So they're selling their product right here. But yeah, they expect 40% to have to reskill in the next 3 years. Yeah, and the reskill would probably be into, you know, basically either you get fired or you completely retool and do something different. And a lot of the people who are immune to this are the people who are proficient in making AI systems do what they want. So kind of interesting. Of course, you can just get this on IBM.com. They're not denying it. In fact, they're pushing it. And speaking also of California, there was a pretty bad crash. Nobody got hurt per se, but they could have been. They could have been. The passenger in the taxi could have been severely hurt. A fire truck has had a bad crash with a robotaxi in San Francisco, and apparently California is stepping in, and it was bad enough that they are cutting the number of robotaxis in San Francisco by half. So if you know, this is kind of the argument I was making early on about AI-based driving. A lot of the people who are arguing, oh yeah, we should have AI, you know, it'll be safer. It doesn't matter. My argument is, from a legal point of view, who's liable, right? Who's culpable when the AI messes up? So the companies can easily go bankrupt with just a handful of lawsuits.
So that's what I want to know more about that particular article, because was it the autonomous vehicle that failed to slow down or evade the oncoming fire truck, or did the fire truck just ignore the fact that there's a car coming and go right through it?
Right. So that's a good question, and apparently Reuters is reporting that the results of the investigation were it was a failure to yield. So basically, and this is not the first time either. For example, there have been logic-locked robocars in San Francisco where cops were directing traffic by hand and basically told them to move out of the way, and they wouldn't. You know, they just they locked. They didn't know what to do, so they stayed where they were and blocked the road. So yeah, this is an ongoing problem with AI cars. They just don't know how to deal with emergency vehicles. You know, most people will, you know, I mean, I've actually popped a tire throwing myself up on the curb to get the hell out of the way of a fire truck. You know, so I actually made a vehicular sacrifice play because I didn't want somebody to get hurt at the destination wherever that fire truck was going. And I mean, I honestly wouldn't have done it that way if I thought, but I just threw myself into it. I'm like, oh, I just knew what the right thing to do was. And that's kind of the problem here, is that, you know, in the example of what happened to me, would a AI do that? Well, maybe you could argue that it would be better at mounting the curb without popping its tire. Or maybe it would decide it had to pop its tire if it was going to mount the curb and wouldn't move because it didn't know what to do, because not damaging itself as part of its code. I don't know. So
autonomous vehicles are interesting problems to me, because if you could get rid of all human drivers, the complexity needed to make these things work would go down. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't be simple. You still have to deal with pedestrians, but it would be easier to deal with, because the cars you'd have could talk to each other and let them know when, hey, emergency vehicle coming through, get out of my way. But when you have to deal with the people, and those are not predictable, not with any great reliability, your autonomous vehicles need to have that much more code, that much more processing power to handle the decision making.
Right.
You know, in 100 years, if people aren't driving anymore and everything's autonomous, this will be easy. But right now, it's painful.
Well, so my argument is actually a little more. I see what you're saying. If everything was, if we had the legal, I think one of the reasons I think what you're saying is true. And I think one of the reasons it's true is because in that 100 years from now, it's safe probably to say that the legal landscape and the case law is well trodden at that point. We know exactly what they can and can't do legally, and they'll write the code appropriately. But like right now, I mean, a person, if a person is reckless, that doesn't mean people are reckless. Just because somebody gets into a high-speed chase with the cops and, kills a bus full of nuns, sorry nuns, it's always a bus full of nuns, it doesn't mean that everyone's going to do that. It just means that guy's a jerk. He goes to jail for manslaughter however many times, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in the case of
unless God forgives him.
Unless God, is that a defense? I don't know. I mean, I'd be very curious. I feel like that's the Chewbacca defense. Like maybe Johnny Cochran could pull that one off. But yeah, no, if you get into a case where where you have people going, we have cars crashing maybe 1/10 or 1/100th as often as people. That's still too many. It needs to be damn near zero. So first of all, the companies that are building these machines and the software for them are indemnified because, or effectively, it's a rounding error. With lawsuits that result from when things go wrong. But they can't. AI-driven cars can't just be good. They have to be a lot better, like orders of magnitude better, for people to not do stuff like this. It's California, and it's San Francisco. If it wasn't like it was in response to a public outcry. It was just an accident. It happened. If you or I did that and failed to yield to, I zoned out. There was a sunbeam.
Yeah,
I dropped my water. Nobody's gonna care. But this shut down half the robotaxis in San Francisco.
But was that an overreaction?
That's the thing. I don't think there was a public outcry. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong about that. So let me know if you guys know about the story.
I don't necessarily think there was likely a public outcry. I think what there was a politician paranoia.
Yeah. Well, agreed. Well, because the thing is, if they, look, when there's harm, there's the risk of suits. And, when there isn't a person in the driver's seat, who do you sue? Who's got deeper pockets, the politician or the manufacturer? They're probably going to name both and find out. So yeah, you're right. They probably are freaked out. They're going to get the butt suit off personally, So, and I mean, that'll get solved eventually, because eventually there'll be enough cases where the judge says, okay, this is ridiculous. It's not the mayor's fault, But until that happens, it doesn't matter if the technology's there. It doesn't. I'm not even arguing it is, but it doesn't even matter if it is. Because, it's got to get over this hump. The technology's got to be way better than people. It can't be just as good or a little bit better. It has to be way better. So I don't think it is there yet.
You also need people who, I would say, understand the technology, but I don't think that's necessary. People who understand reason,
right,
and don't necessarily do things purely through emotion.
So I will say, and I'm not going to say where, but or when, or exactly what, but I have driven a open source AI assisted car where it was literally an open source code controlling the car in conjunction with the driver, right? Because the law is you have to be in the driver's seat and paying attention, your hands have to be on the wheel, and it actually checks you on all that stuff. And that was amazing. But were that car to crash, nobody's going to pat me on the back and say it's okay, even though it was doing everything. It was doing the looking and the steering and the accelerating and the braking. All I did was point it in the right direction and say, I just did a card and said that way, and then it did it. But, I'm still the lawsuit target at the driver's seat. That's kind of, it's not that it was great. I mean, it was really good. It wasn't amazing. It wasn't like unreal, but it was as good as a new driver, I'd say. You know, a new driver with promise. You know, you're probably going to be fine. But, yeah, at the same time, yeah, it was, but that's not the standard. The standard has to blow me away. Mm-hmm. It needs to be able to, like, Evel Knievel its way out of accidents, you know, without hurting its passengers either. So, all right, so you can let us know if you can Evel Knievel your way out of accidents in the comments. Hey Matt, Ariel says, hey Matt, autonomous car was getting a Windows update. Ha ha ha, funny. Yeah. Well, no. Actually, it
wasn't a Tuesday.
It wasn't nice. Well done. Also, that's a problem. That's what I probably, even though I really like the cars, and I like that they're the originators, and I've done plenty of positive stories on Tesla, I won't own a Tesla. Because those things run Linux underneath, and they do auto updates, which is good because they do security updates. But they've had multiple problems that were preventable if you're a Linux tech, and I can't get into the code. They blocked it off, which, by the way, is probably illegal with the way the copyright license works for all that code. So, yeah, I mean, maybe if I move to Massachusetts, maybe that's going to change now. So, you know what? I mean, if they make their code accessible, I understand if they can't for the distant stuff, the drive-by-wire. I can always isolate the antenna like I did in my current car. But yeah, I want to own a Tesla for that reason, because I don't want my Linux systems to not be auditable by me, because I do this for a living. Why shouldn't I be able to protect myself? You know, even if everyone else doesn't know what the heck's going on, I'm a freaking technocrat. I know what's going on. I don't want my car killing me because somebody decided they were going to pull off a terrorist attack in New York. That would never happen. Yeah, it would totally happen, by the way. That's sarcasm. Anyway, so on to science. I just love this section because I love saying science. So the ISS had to dodge another piece of space junk. So this is happening more and more often. You know, I've been doing this show for years now, and I think the first time I covered this was 2 years into the show. I mean, this just happened a couple months ago, and now it's happening again. The ISS is having to move more and more frequently to avoid space junk. So it wasn't the Russians this time. Yes, it was actually the Russians the last time or the time. I think the time before last. The real risk here is it just takes one satellite to not move out of the way, and you've got a disaster. And if you don't know what that disaster is called, it's called the Kessler syndrome. And about 30 to 40 years ago, Kessler made a prediction. Well, he said in 30 to 40 years, and it actually would be now, that we're going to reach a point where there's so much space junk that you can't maneuver around it, and then you're going to get a domino effect. And all of the functioning equipment up in space is going to turn into space junk when they start crashing into each other, and then creating unpredictable vectors of junk direction and speed. Mm-hmm. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, the movie Gravity depicts it perfectly, more or less. So check that out. You know, whatever you think of them human beings bouncing around from space station to space station trying to stay alive. You may think that's silly. Sorry, 1 month spoiler rule. But yeah, things crashing into each other at an accelerating rate in space and basically seeing a ring of fire in the sky is not totally implausible. We might get there. And it looks like, you know, I mean, anybody who understands asymptotic functions knows that, you know, going from years to months or even weeks at this point is bad. It means this year could be the year that we lose big chunks of our satellite infrastructure. Anyway, space.com if you want to learn more.
Did you know that you can talk to the space station apparently if you have a ham radio license?
I think I knew that, but I've never tried it because I don't have a ham radio license at the moment. I probably should get that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Weren't you thinking about getting your ham license?
I wasn't so much thinking about it as the opportunity arose, and I failed miserably.
No. Well, you mean you needed to study a little bit for it?
Yeah, a little bit more than I did, yeah.
Yeah, okay, I got it, yeah.
Yeah, 15 minutes before the test.
What makes you bring that up about the content? I mean, is it just like a computer that will answer you, or the astronauts that will be like, all right, hold on, we got another one, stop their experiments?
So there's, and I wish I could remember the website now, but I think I have it written down someplace or in a text message to somebody. There's a website that will literally give you every single question they might ask on the exam, including the correct answer.
Okay.
And I was reviewing that
okay.
for about 15 minutes before I actually took the exam.
Okay.
And I happened to notice that a couple of the questions there involved something like, what kind of license do you need to talk to, or what can you do with this kind of license, or what can't you do? That might have been a better way to put it. And they listed like 4 things, and talking to the space station was one. And something else was listed, and that was what was wrong, what you couldn't do, which implied that you could talk to the space station if you wanted to. Now, presumably they have to answer, and you have to maybe find the right frequency or whatever, but apparently you'd be well within your rights to do so if you happen to have a ham radio license.
Groovy. Yeah, you know what? I think you maybe just motivated me to get my ham radio license just to answer this question. I want to see how dumb of a question I can get them to answer, because, you know, there wasn't any effort put into getting them up there. So maybe I could do a Bitcoin transaction. Ooh, that would be then I would be able to say, not only have I used space money, I've used space money in space. Yeah, that'd be kind of cool. So we got at least 2 hams in the audience. You need a tech license to talk to the ISS. Okay.
Which, isn't that the basic license?
I believe the tech is the basic one, yeah.
Yeah.
And extras, I think it's tech and extra, and I don't know what's after that. I think they keep going.
There's 3 of them. There's 3 of them.
Oh, there's 3 of them? I thought there was more. I thought you had to do more so you could run like a national broadcast. Oh, maybe it's just for the ham bands. Yeah, I think there are more licenses, because you need to have a certain license, say, to run a TV station. You know, that kind of thing, but or a radio station. Yeah, I mean, there's at least 2 hands in there. If you're a ham, give us a shout out. Let us know. Yeah. Okay. So I have a quest. Thank you for the quest. It's a back burner quest. I still got other things to do. North Carolina University. It turns out hogfish. Do you even know what a hogfish is? Hogfish can see with their skin. So, of course, science stories have citations. So the ISS one was easy. That's NASA. That's the site. That's the source. In this case, it's North Carolina University. And the reason that they think they can see with their skin, apparently a lot of the camouflage animals, including the simpler animals, see with their eyes and then change the color of the skin to reflect what they're seeing. But not hogfish. It's actually almost like a circuit locally in their skin. And the reason they know this is because they can actually change their camouflage once they're dead. So it actually is a protein that's found in their cells, which then control one of 3 colors in their skin color, which can, so basically if you took a dead hogfish, but they're still biologically alive, there's their brain and their tissue hasn't died yet.
A recently dead fish.
A recently dead fish. It'll still work. It'll still camouflage to its surroundings. And so they that's how they got onto this. And then they figured out that that they'll the sensors, the proteins in their skin will actually in turn activate the part of their cells that actually change color. And the thing that's really interesting about this, you may know this too because you worked at a genetics lab, is this isn't from the story, this is just my speculation, but I think this is true, is that opsin, which is the protein in question, theoretically you could just create an RNA to generate opsin. And you may be able to use this in fluorescing applications when you're doing genetic research. So this is a new way to possibly fluoresce cells that have shown a particular attribute. In other words, you could put the RNA to create the opsin in the section of the DNA that you're trying to see if it came to life or not. And then you can just use a conventional microscope to see, oh yeah, we did indeed manage to modify the DNA of this particular.
So, yes, I worked at such a lab, but I know nothing.
Yeah.
But that said, what
I got this from Rock. I knew this from Rock. I actually sat in a talk at Rock. So.
What I get from that is, okay, military applications. If you could do something with that in a sort of a biological suit, or even better still, in human skin, now you basically have camouflage for human skin.
Right. Actually, I think it's RGB, but like old school, like 4-color RGB. So, what was that? Cyan, magenta, blue. What was
Cyan, magenta, yellow.
Yeah, like what were the 4 colors on those old four color displays? It's like that. They only have black, red, and yellow. These fish. I don't think they could do the blue spectrum. But like sometimes it's like, I think squid are like that too. They only have limited, not like octopuses or chameleons who could just do anything, But yes, but it's still. I mean, even if it's lower res, who cares, man?
Mm-hmm.
It's automatic. Military applications would be kind of interesting. I mean, it's not the ability to input the color. Essentially, it's not an eyeball. It doesn't have the ability to do focal. But yeah, I mean, it does. It's like a solar panel almost. It just light input and it tells you what color it is. So, interesting implications for nanites too, because we're starting to get to bacteria being designed as nanites. I wrote a sci-fi book about nanotech, and I was very on the idea that nanotech would have to be bottom up, but so far all the nanotech possibilities are top down, and I mean bacteria seems to be the best one because I just did a story last week where there was a bacteria that's essentially being used as nanites, and they are a natural fit for that because the CRISPR technique actually comes from bacterial DNA. They're already set up to do it, so you can easily do edits. In other words, change the data set for the nanite, aka the bacteria. Of course, let it get into the wild, not so good. But they were trying to beat colon cancer. That's what it was last week. That was also in the science section. Anyway, pop sci, if you want to learn more, but there's definitely a lot of places covering it. And now for the final story, and this is going to get hot. So this is almost going to sound like we're talking about politics, but we're not. We're going to be careful. We're going to be careful to not use names while we're doing this because that seems to have worked so far. Ariella who is a tech, I believe, she said, so there's a tech general and extra. Right, so I think those are the, but I could swear there's more licenses. You can do, maybe they're specific to doing specific things, but yes, I think there needs to be someone in charge of I don't know if you can just run a TV station if you're an extra. That's kind of cool. Makes me want to get an extra. Okay, so, if you know that, let me know exactly what license is required to run, like, say, I don't know, like a single broadcasting TV station, like the local PBS or something like that, where you're literally sending a signal over an antenna to people's TVs across the island. We're on Long Island, by the way, in case you're not from the area. So the last story is actually, I picked this up from Ars Technica, but there's actually a study published on Nature.com. Now, it's various authors. I'm always a little nervous when it's various authors and they're all over the place. Those tend to be a little bit less reliable. In other words, the science may be good, but it's a little more likely to turn out to not be true. But it still looks really good to me. As a new study, apparently anonymity helps political discourse. Oh, wait a minute, hold on. So saying everything that you say for the rest of your life, not being able to be used against you, matters for helps people to be able to speak freely about what they want to say, and helps people and being able to speak freely helps them to come around to someone else's point of view. Color me shocked. I don't know. I mean, I always thought freedom of speech was pretty important. It's kind of a study verifying freedom of speech, and you can't really be free if there's going to be consequences like cancel culture to speaking up. So, I think the result of cancel culture, which is really a corporate creation, I think, is social gridlock. So, not really shocked in this. So the real question, one of the things that they people seem to be focusing on the fact that it seems that one particular wing politically is a little more open to discourse in this environment where your people are allowed to talk anonymously. In other words, they can be influenced more than the other side. But I don't think that's really the point. I think the point is that nobody's going to be influenced unless people can speak without the consequences of going out there and making social errors and getting something wrong and then saying, hey, you know what, I was wrong. And being able to, that's the hard part. I think people are not willing, stepping from having an opinion that, maybe say objectively is wrong, and it's arguable whether there's such a thing as objectively wrong, to getting to the point where you could say, okay, I made a mistake and I had the wrong idea and I'm accepting my error, and then building up kind of a set of social explanations for why you've changed your mind and being ready to have that conversation. So anyway, Ars Technica, if you want to read more.
And it's easier to do that if you're anonymous.
It's easier to do that if you're anonymous. That's basically, they created a social media platform specifically to make people anonymous with like a Twitter or something. A Web 2 kind of technology where everything's centralized. And no, running TV station is a completely different license. That's what I thought too. Okay. Thank you, Ariel. Yeah, so also interesting, I've kind of been running a long-running experiment on the show. I had the theory that we talk about some really hot topics on this show, but they don't quite sound the same because I won't let people, or at least I politely ask people not to use names. And it's almost like the names of politicians and political parties have become like curse words. Like back in the day, if you said that on TV, everybody would go crazy and lose their mind. It's almost like that's happened, but with like the names of politicians now. And I think that there's something to that too. I think that people are actually becoming triggered. And I think that one of the reasons that may be happening is because they're being programmed. And I think that that may have something to do with the anonymity too, is that, look, marketing it's programming you. Whether it's Edward Bernays programming women to smoke cigarettes, or Camel Cigarettes promoting children to smoke cigarettes. I love those examples because nobody really argues that's okay now. It used to be okay, and now it's not. So, everybody just kind of went, that's fine, and then eventually went, yeah, that's not fine. And I think that's kind of what's happening now, is that a lot of people are thinking, yeah, that's fine, we can program people into thinking what we want them to. It's really not, and I think that it's an unethical use of marketing. And one of the things that happens when you don't use those trigger words is people aren't put into that mindset, and then they think about the issues in a new way. Like I hate to bring it up because it's sad, but we had a story about a manatee having gay incestual sex with its brother to the point where it died. Which, if you say those things with the wrong words, that can become a huge controversy. Talking about that, like, you're not going to hear that on most radio stations or TV. It's really sad. But even worse than that, there's a ton of political topics in there. But we just don't go there, so it never becomes a problem. Like, people aren't losing their minds in the comments, and nobody's screaming, and it doesn't become a huge controversy. I've had big shows. I mean, I've had
no one is screaming that
1,000 view shows before.
No one is screaming that the manatees should be able to marry each other.
Right. Well, see, but the thing is, when you're talking about animal behaviors and what's normal and what isn't and what's found in nature and what isn't, these become the foundation for larger arguments. But because we're talking about things in their raw component form, and by the way, just for the record, I'm I'm all for people being able to shoot themselves in the foot and do whatever the heck they want if they aren't creating direct harm to other people. So if people want to get married, you know, it's your funeral, man. You know, I mean, or woman or manatee or whatever. You know. So like, and I mean, and there's huge societal benefits to that too. So there's an upside too. I'm not going to say it's all downside. And but that's a good example of, you know, people get triggered by that. And if you just talk about it in a way that's non-confrontational, and there's two ways that can happen. One is that kind of everybody has a gentleman's agreement or a civic-minded agreement to not intentionally trigger other people. And then, but this is coming at it from a different point of view, where there's no, even if you go whole hog at someone, you get nothing for it because everybody's anonymous. Like, you don't get to watch somebody melt down in real time. You can't cancel anybody because you don't know who they are.
No one can establish a reputation with a particular point of view.
Right, there's no social currency at stake.
So you, as a person who's participating in it, don't know if you really like anonymous guy there because of the 12 things he said before, because it could be somebody else completely different who said them.
Right. Well, one of the things they would do is that they would pair up people who have opposing political views without them realizing it. You know, you wouldn't know who you're paired up with. And yeah, apparently there was some movement. Some people would change their minds. So apparently the consequences, you know, like you get the white glove and the iron gauntlet, right? The iron gauntlet doesn't fucking work. It just makes people dig in. The white glove, on the other hand, yeah, absolutely. So I think there's something really to this. And this is who is ringing my bell? That's interesting. Is somebody did someone order a pizza here?
Does somebody want your domain name?
Does somebody want my domain name? Yeah, I guess who are you? They went away. Okay. Maybe they just pushed all the buttons. Anyway, yeah, so I don't know. I mean, it seems to me like what we've done here has worked. This has worked. I think there's something broader to this where, you know, because I want to see people like you and I won't do it on the show, but like you and I and other people like us have gotten into pretty heated political debates. But it's because we have that agreement that, like, I'm not going to try to ruin you if I disagree with you. That's crazy. It's cruel and counterproductive.
You can have different opinions about things.
Right.
And neither one of you is necessarily wrong or right.
Right.
You know,
one of the reasons I was excited when this story came up. This is the last story in the Dystopia report, by the way, and I thought this would be a good icebreaker for the rest of the conversation. One of the reasons I was excited that this came up on your show is because I think that, you know, out of a lot of people I know, you have a few very strong opinions about right and wrong that fall into political issues, but you're pretty good about, like, not lording it over people and, you know, saying your piece, but also letting people say their piece and hearing them out. So I think you get it, and you've spent a good deal of time studying, I don't know, the nation's leaders in a non-political way. So you know, like Lee read a bunch of books about
the early days.
The early days about a bunch of presidents and where they got their ideas about, you know, rights and freedoms and, you know, what they were doing as governance and that kind of thing. Historical books. And I mean, I really respect that. I think that's amazing. And it's a lot more effort than a lot of people put in. Maybe even people who are quasi-pros or pros in that space, historians and history teachers. And, you know, they don't necessarily get that deep into it. So, you know, I wish you could bottle that and give it to people and tell them, drink this. You know, but maybe this is it. It's just protecting anonymity online.
Well, I'm not going to name names or parties, but I think you'll find it amusing. I know a guy who ended up running for a state elected office.
Mm-hmm.
He won.
Okay.
And I want to say it was about a year ago, he was telling me about something he was doing in Albany.
Mm-hmm.
And it prompted me to say that I have a feeling about, I'm going to say most politicians, not all politicians,
Mm-hmm.
but most politicians get into politics to do something good for their areas, whether that's their local village, their local city, their local state, whatever it is. They want to do something good. They want to help people. They're there for the right reasons.
Mm-hmm.
After a term, maybe two, they get used to the power, the influence, the perks that said office gives them, and now it becomes about elections. And it's no longer about doing what they feel might be really good for the area.
Mm-hmm.
It's about doing what they feel will get them reelected.
Ah, so those currencies, the perks are the currencies that come with that job.
And
Again, it's the currencies acting as disincentives.
I literally told the guy, you know, I think you got into it for the right reasons, but don't be an asshole.
I don't even know what this is about, but fucking awesome, dude. I actually don't know the backstory. I'll ask you after the show, but
Yeah, and I think he took the comment well.
right.
You know, it just.
Well, you know what? Thank God somebody said it to him.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, because
You know, look, it's funny because now I'm going to get more philosophical and a little away from politics in this, but throughout my life, there are moments in my life where somebody has said something, and of course, if you ask me to give an example, I can't because you asked me to give you an example. And it sticks with you.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a conversation you had with somebody who maybe, if you talk to them 20 years later, they won't have any recollection you ever said that to them, or they ever said it to you, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But to you, it's stuck. It was influential in you, and you replayed that moment over and over in your head, and now it's a point.
Right. You internalize it, and it became part of who you are.
And I have no illusions that this is definitely going to happen with this guy. I would hope it does, because it's something like that if a politician hears it, one with a good moral compass, with a good desire to do what's right, that it will stick in his head when people are asking him to do something that he's like, well, do I want to do that? And it won't matter that it's about re-election. It'll matter that that's not really what I should be doing.
So a moment of conscience, or a moment of reckoning. A moment of reckoning is, of course, after you've done it.
Yeah, it's just.
I mean, like I feel like
I don't know if I could give it a name like that. It's a point in time where you end up, for whatever reason, remembering that conversation, that statement, whatever it was, and you'll go back to it periodically over your life, and just know that, yeah, you know, I'm doing something big here, and I shouldn't be an asshole.
So this could go in two directions that I could see this conversation. So one is, where, again, people need to make mistakes. You know, and we need a person who's made a mistake, realizes it's a mistake, has been forgiven, and swears not to do it again, I think is more likely to come through than someone who's never made the mistake. Because the person who never made the mistake, they're one mistake away from maybe thinking it's okay and sticking with it. So I think that, like, people's moral compasses are built on their egregious errors.
Yeah.
You know, hopefully as children at a small scale.
Or if not their errors, then seeing the errors of others.
Right.
And deciding that, no, that's not a good thing. I shouldn't do that.
Right. So that's part of it. I mean, there definitely should be some forgiveness.
Yeah.
You know, and Ariella agrees with you before you said it, I think, actually. She said the problem today is you can't have conversations about things anymore.
No, you can't.
Yeah, and that's
Well, you can. The thing is,
disastrous for civics.
you can't have it online.
Right.
If you meet people, I will say you should be able to have it with your friends. If you can't have conversations like that with your friends, they're probably not your friends.
Yeah, fair enough.
It may be trickier to have it with acquaintances or strangers, but in the right circumstance, if you go, I've heard of groups out there, like you said, they pit people of opposite political viewpoints together with the express purpose of getting them to talk to each other.
Right, to see if it would work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and
it did.
And I think it will. I think it actually would work 80-90% of the time. It's just that when you're on Facebook, even when you aren't anonymous, you're anonymous.
So there's an addictive element to arguing. So one of the most addictive mechanism. So it's well documented. Nobody's denying it in the tech companies. They have meeting after meeting after meeting on how to make their particular application, whether it's a game or something with serious implications like a social media platform, more addictive. They want people to be hooked. I mean, YouTubers and podcasters spend enormous amounts of time and energy trying to figure out how to hook people on their shows because they want to be heard. I mean, and I get that. And the funny thing is, I should probably do that, but I haven't. I'm just doing what I want to do, you know. And I'm hoping that one day people will see it's a treasure on their own, that's worth, you know, the long form interview, which is very, very few. Like lots of people, the few people that are doing long form interviews, you know, we're talking like 2, 3, 4 hour interviews, are usually lauded as like, hey, what you're doing is great. You know, this is really good for complex ideas. But there's not a lot of them. The rewards are not great for doing it. Like, it's a very hard road to walk. Like, I'm speaking from experience, you know. It's not easy to get popular. It's easier to get popular doing 30-second clips. The time that we put into this one show, I could have made 100 shows that would be, you know, little clips that would be very popular but wouldn't say anything.
I might be an outlier, or maybe I'm the norm. I don't know. But when you first started doing your show, I tried to listen to every episode. I don't remember how many I got through. I'm going to guess it was probably 30.
Wow, thanks, man. I appreciate that.
But it got difficult for me because to set aside a time to listen to 3 hours, really hard for me.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I find that I'm listening to things in the car, and my car drives are between 30 and 60 minutes.
Right, got it.
So if I would give you a piece of advice for this show, and it would, I'm going to say it would benefit me, but maybe it would benefit others. Go ahead, do the 3 hour show. I'll be here for 3 hours, but find ways to chop it up into hour segments.
Right.
Even if it means, if you can ever get this onto podcast platforms that I can use, like Spotify or Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, whatever. You get it onto something like that.
Maybe that's the key.
Break them up into hour-long episodes.
So here's a question for you. Would you time shift or not?
What do you mean?
Like, would you time shift, in other words, would you tune in at 8 o'clock every Thursday, or would you, sometime during the week pick it up?
I understand why you want to do the live show.
Yeah.
I'm fine with the idea of you doing a live show if you feel it's important.
I think this is the right way, yeah.
So by all means, do it. But
for you guys,
when you release it to be watched after the fact, chop it up into 3 parts.
So maybe the key is,
because I will not watch it on Thursdays at 8.
Yes, that's what
every once in a while, maybe, but most of the time, no.
Like, the vast majority of the people who watch the show don't watch it live.
Yeah.
They watch it later. But it's good enough for them, knowing that there's a handful of people here commenting and interacting, and they're like, that makes it, I think that adds value. It definitely does add value, because it makes the conversation more interesting. Having the interaction with the audience and having the comments going back and forth.
No, I agree. I like that you do that.
Yeah, and I think I don't just think it's important. I think it's critical. And but yeah, I like your idea, and I think maybe what I'll do, maybe I have a benefit here. Something I'm going to do 2 new things at once, which is that maybe I'll stream, but I'll stream it. Like, I'm sorry, I'll set it on streaming platforms, but I won't do it live. I'll do it pre-recorded, split into 3 pieces.
Yeah.
Show. And just it never goes on the streaming platform until it's already split into 3 pieces.
Yeah.
Or maybe 4. You know, we'll see. If it's over 3 hours, maybe I'll split it up. Yeah, I mean, it would be easier if I just did it at the hour mark, right? Write a quick script rather than thinking too hard.
Because you don't want to cut off a topic.
Right.
You know, if maybe you break it up into the Dystopia report and then the remainder of the chat.
Right.
Even
it's too disorganized for that. But yes, I could find a topic that's...
Yeah. And dude... the way I would envision this...
I was agreeing with the 3-part thing. Yeah, maybe, well, that would be a good starting point anyway. Maybe I could break it into more parts later.
If I could influence you to the point of doing it, I would say, yes, do what you do in the night.
That seems like it's those 2 things together seem like they're
do what you do in the night, and your opening to the podcast version, to the audio-only version, is simply, hey, if you want to see us live, Thursdays at 8 on these platforms. Otherwise, enjoy, and now you have the 3 parts on Spotify.
Right. So there's one thing is, so of course the network effect is all about, you know, dominating a platform. Now, I think that people have multi-platform shows, and they end up dominating one platform without dominating the other. So that's kind of debunked a little bit. I think there's still some truth to it, where the network effect is hurt a little bit when you have it on multiple platforms. But I think because of the censorship environment and because people are usually running the ads inside the show now, which is how I intend to run it when I get to that point where I have more than a couple of sponsors, you know, when I actually have advertising type sponsors, you know, I'll run it inside the show. You know, I might have to, you know, I'll stop for 30 seconds, read my thing, and then, you know, go back to... But, yeah, now that that's the case, you can break it up and put it wherever you want. So where it is isn't as important. And Web 2's going away. I mean, we're already in Web 3. I think AI, I don't know if you heard my theory on it. I think you have heard my theory. Web 3 is AI, and Web 4 is going to be the fully distributed metadata. Originally, I thought it would be 3 was the distributed metadata. I didn't see this coming with the AI, but I think it's definitely... The top geeks are already using some AI for search, so it's already happening. So I think that we're there. You know, people are going to have their own neural nets sitting on their laptops or their desktops. The only disadvantage, the reason you're not seeing it yet, is because you need a minimum of 16 gigs of RAM to run an AI effectively. So you need 16 gigs just for the AI, and then some for your operating system and whatever other tasks you're doing. So we're talking about people with 32 gigs of RAM or more that can do this. But so that's going to be a lot of people soon. You know, we're going to keep walking up the tech curve. You know, 16 gigs of RAM was ridiculous at one point. Now it's like, if you talk to someone who knows what they're talking about and you buy a computer, that's kind of the minimum. So,
I don't know, I'd still argue 8, but there are people arguing 16.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I could... Look, if it's a purpose-built computer that just does a thing, you know, like...
and I would argue 8 for your, you know, your mom, your average Joe, if you will. For us, yeah, you want 16, you want 32.
Oh, well, for me, I need it. I haven't run VMs, so, you know. Yeah, I mean, I think... yeah, I don't know. I think still think 16 is... But I see what you're saying. Well, that could be a big hurdle. You know, maybe someone's going to need to build a more streamlined neural net then. Like, it won't be... This could be just a Technocrat web. You know, Web 3 might... It's a good point. I mean, if we don't get the widespread 16 gigs, Web 3 might not take off. Because...
Oh, we'll get there. It may be Windows 12, but we'll get there.
Okay. Yeah, so I did want to... by the way, guys, I want to remind you guys, please, I appreciate all the comments. We've got a lot of comments this time, and that is what I want to see. I want to see people asking us questions, and don't be afraid to ask me or ask Lee questions if you have something that you want to talk about. And of course, the big thing that I want to talk about, well, first, before we get into it, from the news, can you pick anybody in the news that deserves an Owie award? So Owie is own worst enemy. So who in the news was really screwing themselves over? And I don't even know if you remember all the stories, but of course we have, the Zoom CEO. I think he's a candidate. I'd nominate him.
Yeah, like I said before, that's the Elon Musk move to me.
Yeah, okay. All right, so we're going to give it to the Zoom CEO. We may be seeing him stepping down soon.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, that's just...
How did he not see that coming? I mean, of course it was going to leak.
I mean, he may well be absolutely correct, but...
Yeah, well, if you have one job, which is promoting your product...
Yeah,
and keeping it running, and then you blow that... Yeah, he's probably his own worst enemy. And thanks, and I like your idea, and I think I'm gonna run with it. So you recently took a trip. I'm gonna make myself a coffee, and I want you to tell everybody about. I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. I invited you on the show specifically for this. Where did you go?
I went to hell, also known as Las Vegas.
You went to hell. What do you think of Vegas, man?
It was my third time there, and
I didn't know you'd been there before.
Yes. I went to 2 other IT specialist, basically, events there back about 10 years ago.
Okay.
And the interesting thing is when I go to Vegas, it rains.
What? Are you like a plague? Are you a biblical plague?
I don't know. First time I was ever in Vegas, got off the plane, took a car to the hotel. I stayed a block away from the hotel with the event in it, not at the convention hotel. Mm-hmm. And after I dropped my bags in my room and took a walk over to the hotel, as I'm walking over, it absolutely downpoured.
Oh, man, really?
First time in Vegas, and it absolutely downpoured.
You want to hear something really weird? It rained the one time I've been to Vegas. On the way in, actually. Keep going.
So the second time I was there, I honestly don't remember it raining. But the third time, it was Thursday morning, and that was the less than 24 hours there. It rained. It didn't rain nearly as bad as the first time, but it rained.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty weird, man.
But so I went to go to Defcon for the first time.
Defcon. So for those people who don't know, if you're in the New York area, Defcon is there's a Defcon locally, which is actually a industrial DJ conference. But that's not the one. That's newer than the one that you went to. You went to the global Defcon, which is 30 years old now.
It was Defcon 31.
Okay.
And let's see. First time there. I'd heard numerous things about it, like you don't bring your cell phone, you don't bring your laptop, because it's basically a hacker convention. And
that's right, we're talking hacker convention, people.
I think DEFCON 30, as I understand it, drew about 30,000 people. I would have to guess they did the same, maybe more.
Right. So I actually covered it in the story a few weeks ago. I don't know if anybody heard. Did you get to see the LED cipher leak talk?
No.
You didn't get to see it. Okay.
No. So the first day I was there, I spent an hour and 15 minutes on a line to get my badge. Interesting little factoid: you can prepay for your DEFCON badge. If you do, it costs $20 more. If you get it at the event...
That's awesome. They have an RSVP financial disincentive.
Yes. You get it at the event. So the prepaid amount was $460. The at the event cost was $440. And it's cash only.
Nice.
You cannot use a credit card. They don't give you a receipt. Although... They do make a receipt available on their website.
Okay.
As I would later learn at their, I don't remember if it was DEFCON 101 panel or if it was the closing one, they basically gave an example that they don't require names, they don't want names. And there was apparently a time where one of their attendees was potentially sought after by the authorities. And
for what?
Yeah, you can guess.
Poor Kay.
And apparently the authorities submitted search warrants to all the hotels in the area, but they didn't get one at Defcon because they knew Defcon did not take names. Mm-hmm. There would be nothing they could give them. So it probably, as he said, probably saved them money. Give them a head count. It probably saved them money in terms of the effort and cost to put together such a list.
Oh my God! Could you imagine how many requests for information there would be?
So there's a lesson here, Web 2 companies. Yeah, if you like wasting money, keep keeping track of everything.
So yeah, the line was really long, but it moved pretty quickly, and. After I paid for the badge and I went over to, they had these chill out rooms where you could just kind of sit down and relax and just hang out, chill out. And sitting at a table, this guy comes over, sits a couple seats away and starts asking people where they're from, if they've ever been before, things like that.
Okay.
And he says he's a local, and at one point, I don't remember all the details of the conversation, but the part that stuck out was he recommended don't go to any of the talks. Defcon consists of talks and then villages. And the villages are sort of like mini-cons in themselves, but they're specific to a topic. So you had Red Team Village, Blue Team Village, Social Engineering Village, Lockpicking Village, Physical Security Village. There must have been 30-something villages, and just those are the ones that come to mind. But he said, go to the village. Go to the villages, spend time there, because one of the nice things about the villages, where it makes sense, you can just sit down and try things yourself.
Right.
So Lockpicking Village, they had a dozen tables or more with locks and picks all on the tables. You just go up to the table, grab a seat, grab a lock,
what kind
grab
of
a
locks?
pick.
Is like master locks or like locker locks for a high school, or we're talking like hardcore bank vault doors?
Well, nothing that hardcore.
Yeah.
But they had a bunch of master locks. They have, so I want to say company, but it's probably more of a, I think, nonprofit organization, but I could be wrong about the nonprofit part.
Right.
It's called Tool, and that's with 3 O's. I've forgotten what it stands for, but it's something like Open Organization something. In any case, TOOOL.US, I believe. And they're the ones who basically put the thing on. And they also sold lockpick kits, tools, and trial.
Cash?
They actually took credit cards. But they would accept cash, yes.
Oh, good enough. Interesting.
And they also sold, I think it was a set of 6 locks. Each lock, so you had a lock with 1 pin, a lock with 2 pins, 3 pins, 4 pins, 5 pins, 6 pins.
Okay.
And so they had some of those locks on the table. They had some master.
I know from the lockpicking lawyer, who is an awesome lock picker on YouTube, maybe one of the best, and really instructive, that usually the 4 and 5 pin stuff is kind of like the junk consumer stuff. When you get into 6 pin stuff, it tends to be the higher dollar, like it's considered to be safe-ish.
Well, so in any case, they throughout the day on Friday and Saturday, which are the 2 main days, and even a little bit on Sunday, they had, I want to say, like every 3 or 4 hours, they would run a intro to lockpicking class where they just put up some slides, talked about the basics of the lock and how to pick it. And after the 20-minute show, you go sit down and try to do it. And it took me about 5 or 10 minutes to open up the first lock and maybe 5 minutes to open the second, and then I got up and left. But I was intrigued. I bought some picks, and when I got back to New York, I decided to go to Home Depot and purchase a couple of locks that they had.
Go on.
And I have subsequently figured out how to open those in about 30 seconds to 2 minutes.
What?
I then went to dollar stores and bought cheaper locks. I've only been able to open one of the 3 that I got, and that took 20 minutes.
Okay.
So I'm not going to name the brand, although maybe I should. But if you get the lock at Home Depot, yeah, probably don't want to use it. Go to a dollar store. The locks are better.
Awesome.
But that aside,
Yeah.
where were we on Defcon? So yeah, he said go to the villages.
Yeah, that was one of the villages you
Yeah.
went to, was the lockpicking.
Go to the villages, talk to people, sit down, play with stuff.
Right.
And the talks, Defcon apparently releases online about 2 weeks after the event.
Oh, by the way, Rich says it's the Open Org of Locksmiths. And both Rich and Ariella have an interest in this.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, their website has some interesting animated graphics of how locks work, and it just was, it was shockingly easy how to open those locks. And
Right.
and when I'm looking around these days, it's like everything is just a joke now. and
Nice.
I say that, but
Oh my God! Do you just see the code? Blonde, brunette, redhead.
it just, even if I can't open it,
Mm.
I look at myself as like, I took one 20-minute class sitting 2/3 of the way back in the room, and I've spent 3 hours playing with them, and I can open these certain locks with ease. So anybody with actual skill
And time.
your locks are crap.
Right. You're not. No, people can just walk. Well, so
Yeah.
this is interesting. It actually ties into our conversation before, and it's a point I wanted to make. We kind of never got to it. But like, on the one hand, people having conversations when you're anonymous, if you're anonymous, there's no way to ding someone's social credit or cancel them, and so it seems like at that extreme, that true anonymity, you walk away, it's over. It's really over no matter what. Then that lets people be honest in a way. But there's also the opposite, which is people who are friends meeting in person. And there's always the risk of the get punched in the face test, right? If you say something egregious enough, you might get punched in the face, right? Like that's a especially if it's at a bar and you've had a few drinks and everybody's a little loose, and they're not necessarily thinking straight. So thinking about that with the poor quality of locks, think about like a house and how it's protected. The reason that people don't just take a credit card and slip it through that stupid lock at the top of your window, which is the way into 90% of the houses out there, and just to rob them, is because they don't want to wake up the owner and get punched in the face. It isn't really the lock.
No.
The lock is just slowing them down enough
Right.
so they make enough noise to notify the dog.
That's
And then the dog will tell the owner, hey, you got to punch this guy in the face.
That's an excellent point. What you have to look at locks as is a deterrent. How much of a deterrent depends on the lock,
Right.
but it's a deterrent in that it will slow you down.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you have the key, it will slow you down by about 5 seconds, if that. If you don't have the key, it depends on the lock and a little bit of your skill, but it may slow you down 30 seconds, it may slow you down an hour.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, if it's going to slow you down an hour, maybe what you'll do is just break the window.
Right. Well, if you're someplace where you can sit there and pick a lock for an hour, it might be okay to break the window.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to notice. Yeah.
So, but
But also, like, so one of the things, I don't know if did you guys study safes at all?
No, and what's actually kind of funny about that,
I do know a little bit about this, so I have a point, but keep going.
it was like 5-6 days later. I live in a large apartment building in Queens, and people will take certain things to the area to our designated floors recycling area.
Mm.
I walked in there, and somebody had left a small-ish, I want to say maybe 16 inches by 9 inches by 9 inches safe.
Okay.
And I looked at that and said, ooh, it has a lock.
Nice.
But I went
well,
back.
you know, a safe doesn't do a lot of good if it's light enough that someone can just sprint away with it.
Well, that's true too. But
Yeah.
I looked at that and I thought for a minute, and then I just left it there and went back into my apartment and told my fiance that I'll draw the line at safe cracking.
Interesting. So, safes are usually rated by how long it takes to cut through their physical barriers. So the lock is considered impenetrable for the sake of this rating the safe, or, you know, it's not considered in the rating of the safe. Of course, the safe company is expected to put an appropriately tough lock to the rating of the safe. The safe is typically rated in how many minutes per side it takes to break into it. And usually, like, the best consumer safes you get, of course, again, Home Depot, you know, some of the safes you get there are just crap.
Yeah.
You know, like, literally you can break into them in a minute.
Like,
But-
I used to have, in fact, I still have a little, like, cash box.
Right.
Which you could argue is a extremely basic safe. And some of those things you can literally open with a paperclip.
Yes.
So I've done that for years, and I never considered myself as to knowing how to pick locks.
Right.
When I'm using lock picks and I actually understand what's going on inside the lock, now I kind of consider myself knowing how to pick locks. I'm not going to say I'm particularly good at it,
Right.
but I know how to do it.
Yeah. So so usually the safes are measured in time, right? And it's time per side. So a good consumer grade safe would be 15 minutes. You can't get into it in less than 15 minutes, no matter what you do. So I'd be very curious to see how the lock side of it how they measure that. You know, what is a 15-minute to pick lock look like?
Yeah.
I mean, I have safes. They're pretty safe. They're not bad for consumer grade. They're not the lowest of the Home Depot stuff. But, you know.
I will also say that.
But I wonder now, you know.
There are some keys, some locks that use, like, there's one lock I have a key for, where if you look at the key itself, the cuts are at an angle.
Okay.
So most keys, if you look at your key, it's just kind of straight up and down, creating little platforms at various areas. But the key that I have, they're literally cut at an angle. I want to say like a 45-degree angle. Some like this, some like this, and I'm assuming, I don't know for certain, but I'm assuming that lock will be a bit harder to pick if the pins have to be moved in a certain way, not just up or down to a point.
Right.
So.
Well, also there's the issue of, can you get your hands on a key, and then you can just duplicate the key, and then you just use a key, right? You know, and this is something that's interesting that's come up to me with vehicles. You know, like I lost the last key to my vehicle unwittingly. Like, I didn't realize. I thought I had one key left, and I lost my last key, and that's of course a nightmare. You know, you need to pay a locksmith, either a dealer or a locksmith, to get back in your car. Fortunately, I found a locksmith because the dealer is more money. The guy shows up in a minivan. He had everything he needed to just rekey any car he saw fit in a minivan. Not even a particular big minivan either. It was like a small one. What? You know, so yeah, I mean, Rich actually said nothing is safe. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, you can break into any vehicle. You can own any vehicle, like practically, not legally.
So I'm gonna try not to talk too much about this because it's otherwise easily visible online.
Mm-hmm.
There was, and he was present at Defcon this year. I did not go and see him speak, but he's given a talk. I think his name is Deviant Olam.
Deviant?
Deviant.
The dude's name is Deviant. Awesome.
It may be his handle. I don't know.
Whatever.
Probably his handle.
Perfect. No, I hope it's his name. He should change it to his handle.
But he's got a video on YouTube. He's actually got two. One's a recording from Defcon. The other is from HOPE, which is Hackers on Planet Earth.
Right. That's a New York conference.
Right.
By the way.
And that one seems to occur every couple of years, whereas Defcon is every year.
Yeah.
In any case, the HOPE one is 2 hours, and he talks about elevators. And it's really kind of fascinating because I suspect that most people don't have a clue about elevators. They get on it, they push a button, they hope it doesn't fall.
Right. If it gets stuck, they push the red button and yell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He goes in great detail over the technologies involved in elevators. And one of the things that, interestingly, he points out is he's not so concerned about the elevator falling. He's concerned about it going up really fast.
Really?
Yes.
I have not heard of this. Go on.
Because there's a counterweight, and if that counterweight ends up falling, that counterweight weighs more than the elevator and the people in it.
Oh, right.
So...
Yeah, I mean, I think that so, I don't know how it looks in the rest of the country, but 98% of the time, if you step onto an escalator or an elevator in New York, at least New York Metro, it says Otis on it.
Mm-hmm.
And Otis was the guy who figured out the locking mechanism, the safety brake locking mechanism. Basically, the elevator clicks past locking mechanisms, and if it were to ever fall, it will suddenly pins will jut out and force the elevator to stop falling.
And one of the things that he points out is even if the elevator...
But they only work going down.
Even if the elevator were to fall...
Yeah.
If you've ever looked at an elevator shaft,
Mm-hmm.
just you caught a glimpse of one, you saw one on TV, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
you may have noticed that there seem to be giant springs at the bottom.
Right.
And a lot of people, at least according to this guy's video, like to look at the springs and assume that it's something that the elevator sits on when it's at rest or something like that.
Yeah.
No, it's actually a safety mechanism.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, if the elevator drops and it hits those springs, as he says in the video, you'll be hurt. You may need a hospital, but you'll probably live.
Interesting.
So but that's not my point to the whole thing. I would recommend watching the 2-hour version of the elevator thing.
By the way, this is not a serving suggestion. Don't try it.
It's...
Well, don't blame us if you try. But do tell us. And video it, too. You probably get a lot of hits on that one.
It's a fascinating thing. But the reason that I bring it up is in relation to the keys.
Mm-hmm.
Because he talks about the keys involved with elevators. And how they are... He's got a key ring. It's a large enough key ring, but it's not ridiculous. And he's got keys to about, on that one key ring, 70% of all elevators in the country. If you think about the number...
I don't know if I just picked it up, but I just gulped.
If you think about the number of elevators...
That was actually unintentional. It just happened. It was like cartoon time. All right, go ahead.
If you think about the actual number of elevators that are in this country, and the fact that his key ring, from what he showed on the video, is probably like that big.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, like I said, there are a lot of keys on it, but it's that big.
Right.
And it will handle 70% of the elevators in the country.
Right.
Security on the elevators is not necessarily that big.
Right.
There was another fascinating thing. I love the way.
Well, this is one of the things with. I don't want to lose you, but I do want to say this is one of the things also with security's not that great. What was I going to say? Oh no, I vapor locked. Yes, it is Technocrat Live because I vapor locked. Go ahead, say the thing you're going to say, and I'll come back to it.
Okay, so if you've ever noticed, especially in New York,
Mm-hmm.
If you're standing outside an elevator, the elevator doors usually have a little hole, maybe 10% down from the top.
Right. Okay.
That little hole, if you stick an appropriate stick into it or key of some sort, you can slide the door back. It's sort of an emergency release.
If the elevator's at that floor.
Right. Well, possibly. I don't remember that part.
Okay.
I would assume so, but no. Actually, if I understand correctly, it would work regardless.
Oh.
Because apparently New York City drug dealers figured out how to use that to open the door and stash drugs behind it.
Okay.
So
makes sense. Lots of elevators.
When they found this happening, they were like, okay, well, how can we stop that? I know.
It's kind of like an Amazon Dropbox.
Let's put a ring-based key lock into that hole.
Mm-hmm.
So this way you can't open the door without the key.
Right.
So, and I am trying to say it the way he did. I don't know that I'll do it justice. But he points out that there's basically two keys to that lock.
Okay.
There's the fast key and the slow key. The fast key is the correct key. You put the correct key in, you turn it, and you pull the lock out.
Right.
The slow key is literally any other key. You put the key in, you take a wrench or pliers or something, you turn it the other way, and you unscrew the lock.
Because, of course, there's only two directions that you can screw it in. So, yeah, that's, oh, sorry. Yeah.
My mic went limp.
Your mic... your microphone launched in your general direction.
Inadvertent mic drop.
Yeah. Whoa! Dude, you automatically... Did you write a script? Was that a script that did that? That was pretty awesome. We got so Rich actually said, pick professional lock, a pick prof lock takes more than 2 minutes to pick. I'm assuming that's the name of a type of lock, but I don't know.
Like I said, the locks that I got, so the locks I got at Home Depot were, again, I'm not going to name names, but they're very well known. Mm-hmm. They had a scale on them suggesting how secure they would be. Mm. On a scale of 1 to 10, one was a 5, the other was a 7, implying that they're decent to good. No, not top line, but good. Mm. And those are the ones that I opened in 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
Wow.
Respectively.
That's crazy.
So, yeah, I did, no. And the dollar store locks have been a lot more difficult to open. I got one. I'm still working on the others.
Did you try the key? Did they work at all?
Yes, I tried the key.
I had to ask. And by the way, there's also another thing. Actually, so I've actually used to have a segment on here during COVID called "Recipe for Disaster," where I shared all my bug out gear, and I think I shared one of these on that show. But I bet you most people don't remember or know. Wouldn't know what I'm going to say. So. One of the things that could happen if you're ever in a situation where, like, let's say you have to flee an urban area. Like, let's say in New York, let's say someone hacks all the cars, right? You know, that would never happen. That's ridiculous. And the roads are completely locked. It's going to take a month for tow trucks to pull them off the roads. So, you know, you're not going to get food or gasoline. You're walking out of New York City. So let's say that happens. And, well... what's the biggest problem with walking out of a city? You know, weight. And what's going to weigh the most of the things you're going to want to bring with you? Water. Mm-hmm. You need gallons of water. You know, many, many gallons of water. Each gallon of water weighs 7 pounds. You're not going to be able to carry enough water to get clear of the city.
Just imagine if you were trying to grow marijuana, too.
Yeah. Imagine if you're trying to bring your stash. Actually, marijuana's pretty light compared to water.
Yeah, but if you're growing marijuana, apparently it takes 5 gallons a day.
No, we see, if you're bringing your marijuana seedlings with you in your suitcase instead of clothes or food or something, right? So, you know, you're forced to walk out of someplace. By the way, this happens almost every war, right? So, like, if there's
somebody's got marijuana.
Someone. Thank God, right? I mean, hey, yeah. How else are you going to stop them, man? You're just like, dude, just put the rifle down, try this, you know? Yeah. But, if you're walking out, you need water. We can't carry it with you. It's too heavy. So what are you going to do? Well, it turns out most municipal water supplies have a key. It's the same freaking key across the entire country.
Mm-hmm.
So like, all you need to do is carry. There's like 3 or 4 keys. That's it. You can literally carry 3 or 4 fairly lightweight keys and maybe a pair of pliers in case it gets stuck and you have to give it the old.
Dude, watch.
And you can open up any spigot you see.
Watch the elevator hacking talk, because he goes into the keys used on the elevators, and it's almost scary because they try to make it secure, only they publish the spec.
Oh, Rich was saying professional rated lock. Got it. Yeah. So, but it wasn't a brand; it was professional. I thought it was. I was like, you can go either way. I think maybe Prof's a brand. That'd be a good brand name, but yeah, cool.
So, other things at Defcon, like I said,
you sent me some pictures.
I sent you some pictures.
Yeah.
I don't know if I remember all of the ones I sent.
Well,
but,
one that comes to mind was the ones of the disemboweled, demanufactured cars with its entire CAN bus and all its components.
Yeah, so in the car hacking village...
The CAN bus is the network in your car, in case it has a computer network, just like your home network, like your Wi-Fi, except it's not wireless, it's wired. Thank God. At least it did something right.
To that end, the car hacking village, if I did not play around with it, but if you go to Defcon, I do think you have the opportunity to play around with hacking a car. They had a Nissan there. I don't remember what model, but they had a sign on it that basically said, no, don't connect to things that you don't have permission to connect to, but you can ask if you can connect to it. It was just
a set of rules of engagement.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
But they also had somebody went to a junkyard and pulled out essentially the CAN bus of a 2012 Ford Fiesta, was it? Mm-hmm. I don't remember. I may have told you in the text, but and mounted it all on boards and whatnot, and had it running, and a computer hooked up to it so that you could try to do stuff with it.
Wow, cool, man. And if you think about it, that is not only accessible. I mean, it's not accessible to us because we're in New York City and space is tight. But anywhere else, anywhere where you could put a car up on blocks in your yard, which is almost everywhere else in this entire country, like 99%, even in the cities, because New York City is the biggest city in the country. So, like, the cities, even in other cities, you have more space. You could just go to a junkyard, get a wrecked, totaled, but still kind of functional, like maybe it can't drive because, oh, don't worry, it's the neighbors downstairs. We're not being invaded. The black helicopters will come if we keep this conversation up. So, which is fine. I'm okay with that. Yeah, but and just put it up in blocks and hack it. So literally, for the price of a junk car, which is usually the scrap metal, which is usually a few $100, you have everything you need to hack entire fleets of cars. Because these are all software. They're running the same software. Like, a lot of them run Linux underneath. And Linux has vulnerabilities all the time. I mean, there's been a few times that Teslas have been bricked or had security problems because of normal problems with Linux that they missed, or someone published a 0-day, like they just published. We just talked about that with the WinRAR. There are those kinds of things in Linux too, and that affects your car. And the manufacturer doesn't update it, but it is attached to the internet, or if they update it badly, your car could get hacked. It's crazy. And I mean, anyway, so you didn't play with that stuff, though.
I didn't play.
I really wanted to go to Defcon. I mean, that's probably where you would have found me.
Yeah, that, or I would expect in the voting machine village.
Yeah, voting machines too, man. Holy cow.
But yeah, I mean, they have a ton of stuff. Some of it's fun, nonsensical stuff. They had a tinfoil hat contest. They had a contest to see how fast you could cool a beer down from, I think it was like 95 degrees to 36 degrees. I think the winners got it down in 45 seconds.
What?
And
with nitrogen?
No, I think it involved.
Were you allowed to just bring
copper from a penny or from pennies?
What?
They did something with it.
Was it a sealed beer in a can? Or was
that I don't know.
Okay.
But it had to be drinkable. I do remember that.
Oh, okay. You couldn't poison it.
Right.
Yeah, that's pretty useful.
Yeah, so trying to think chronologically what I did there.
So did you see the voting machine stuff?
I went to the voting machine area.
I know you showed me a couple pictures. They were older voting machines.
Yes.
Like from the mid-zeros.
As near as I could tell, the stuff they were showing us was older stuff.
What do you think that is? I mean, I know one of the things you showed me was Diebold, and I know they're out of voting machines right now.
Well,
nobody's going to care if you like.
I think Diebold, the person I sat there, didn't sit really. I stood there as she went over things with 3 or 4 people, myself included. They were used in California, I think, in 2008 and 2012. She said, and she had an issue with those particular machines because they didn't create a paper trail.
Well, I mean, yeah.
They would give
Jesus Christ! I've written a log file to a dot matrix.
But they created a paper summary, but not a paper trail.
Right.
And one of the things that she did like about them, though, is she pointed out that unlike a lot of other solutions out there, these actually had audio solutions. So for people who were blind, they could plug in a headset and be guided as to what to do when they were voting.
Ah, okay, cool.
But a lot of other voting machines don't have that capability, and so what's the alternative for those people? Have somebody else read it to them? Vote for them? You know, she didn't like, and I would understand why, but she didn't like those ideas.
Mm-hmm.
So for as problematic as those machines were,
I hate to sound like Bones in Star Trek, but what is this, the fucking Dark Ages? Jesus.
As problematic as those machines were, they did have a certain usefulness, utility.
Right. They had some things right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She also pointed out that I think they may have been used later on too for people with vision issues.
Mm-hmm.
But then her point was, well, this creates the possibility of discriminating against those people with vision issues if there's an issue with it.
Right.
And her solution was to randomly pick people from the voting population at large to also use those devices to help keep a control over it.
Right.
I don't know. I personally find that to be questionable as to whether that would really give a good sample, but...
Right.
That was the only machine that I really...
You know, it occurs to me, we used that in New York up through 2012. We had, like, hanging Chad style physical machines with a big lever, and it was a field
Yes.
of levers.
Mm-hmm.
If you were blind, if you had, like, say, were part of a blind group that could tell you the order of the candidates, you could easily have memorized which ones you were going to do and flip the right things and pull the lever all by yourself, and no one had to help you.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think they had Braille settings on them too. You know, they actually had Braille, text on the in the paper. So that was it. So easy.
They had other machines there that were disassembled, but they were clearly scanner based. I did find it amusing that the internals of them seem to be using 386 SX CPUs, which, you know, you're going back to like 1990.
I mean, actually, that's kind of encouraging, right? Because if you have, you know, like a modern i9, you know, it can be doing a lot of shenanigans with an i9 in the background. Where the 386, at least, I mean, it's not enough, right? Because we're talking about very simple addition and subtraction operations. You can program it at you could program the machine to cheat at an assembly level pretty easily.
I think, having had conversations with you about this in the past, I think you would have found that stuff fascinating. I don't know if you would have been able to occupy your entire time there.
Right.
Because she went over.
I would totally want to see the modern ones. You know, I don't care about.
She went over
retired Diebold shit. It's over.
Yeah.
No one's gonna reverse that election unless people have already been unelected or died or something. You know. Yeah.
But so that stuff was interesting. The physical security village was fascinating because they had multiple tables. It was also packed. They generally did a very good job at keeping the rooms within what I would imagine was fire code.
How'd they do that? They cull the peaks?
They would literally allow people in batches and wait for the rooms to empty out. Not completely, but enough that they
Were
felt
there guards
they could,
at every door?
Not every door, but a lot of them.
Okay, interesting.
I kind of felt
they need a lot of volunteers to run something like this.
I kind of felt they needed more at the physical security village, because when I got into that room was packed.
Yeah.
Not to a point where you couldn't move, but it was tight.
Yeah.
And walking around that room and seeing some of the stuff that you could do, just play with, they had an area for opening handcuffs. They had an area for opening crash bars on doors.
Yeah.
Opening deadbolt locks that have the little flip on them.
Okay.
At one point, when I went over to a certain area in that room, they had two guys in sort of medical scrubs, and I literally watched as one guy injected an RFID tag between the guy's index finger and thumb.
Wow.
And the guy was saying, yeah, this is my second one. I have the one in my left hand. This is the one in my right now. I'm going to use it for this. And I don't remember what he said, but he was talking about how he was going to use these tags that he had implanted into his skin, and he got them there.
Wow.
If you want to be an RFID and tagged individual, go to Defcon and sit down and get one.
Right. It kind of reminds me of when I got my ear pierced when I was 15. And the one guy's piercing my ear, and the other guy's like, you gonna let him pierce your ears? He can't even tie his shoes. Putting on scrubs does not a doctor make.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would guess these guys, I would hope these guys had some actual medical training. But
I'm kind of more amused by the idea of just some guy in scrubs running around Las Vegas injecting people with chips.
There was somebody else there. I'm assuming she was a nurse.
Yeah.
Because the guy wanted to get up and walk away. And he was like, no, we need to have a seat here. We don't know if you're going to have a reaction or something. So please just have a seat here for a little while.
Okay.
So they were, to me...
Who did they say this to? The guy who just got injected?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
They were...
I'd say if they only said it to the pretty girls, then they're definitely not doctors.
And they had, by that desk and by those two guys, there was a sink where they would literally scrub up. And I watched it. They weren't just saying, okay, give me your hand. And they were putting on, like...
I mean, RFID chips are simple.
Yeah, but my point is they were doing it, I want to say with, is it betadine?
Uh-huh.
You know, wiping down the skin for infection. And it seemed like they were taking appropriate precautions.
Everything there seems that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that's good.
You know, I went over to the biohacking village.
Mm-hmm.
That was interesting. There was
sounds terrifying already.
They had a bunch of vendors who make implantable devices.
Okay.
What was interesting is before you could go in that room, you had to sign an agreement that said if you found any vulnerabilities, you would disclose them to the medical device manufacturers.
Whoa.
However,
okay,
you didn't have to sign your real name.
Awesome. They didn't do an ID check or anything?
No.
Oh, of course.
And not only that,
it's Defcon.
But she explicitly said it doesn't have to be your real name.
So it's not just security theater, it's security comedy theater. Wow. Yeah, this is constant. You know, like there's a lot of. I mean, it's not just Defcon. I mean, we're kind of joking about this, but I mean, a lot of security is just theater.
Speaking of which,
you know, it's just everyone like
everyone's doing the dance. We're men in tights, and it's like it's doing nothing.
This is
no one's safer.
This is not Defcon. I'm going to go back to my hotel now.
Okay.
When I checked into my hotel,
Shenanigans.
I had to go into when I went up to my room. I had to walk back past a security guy and a scanner, and I'm carrying my bags. I've got my laptop in my backpack. Actually, I got a couple of laptops, a couple of tablets, and
yeah, backups. You're ready.
Well, I mean, yeah, the cheap $60 laptop that I put Linux on. That was what I was going to bring to Defcon.
Right.
But
good choice.
I ended up never actually taking the thing out.
Yeah.
But that said, I did bring it. But the security guy there is like, oh, you set off an alarm. Can I check your bag? Okay. And if you think about it now, this is at a casino hotel. And what happened in Las Vegas about 3-4 years ago?
In Mandalay Bay, you mean? Yeah.
So it made sense that they were checking this.
Yeah. In case for some reason you don't know, there was a mass shooter from, I don't know, the 30th floor, and he shot at a concert. He killed a bunch of people.
Yeah. Like 50 people and injured a bunch more.
This is at Mandalay Bay. Which, by the way, I stayed at after that because I wanted to check out their security, which was very bad.
Well, so
it was a nice hotel, but terrible security. They couldn't have stopped it a second time.
So the thing that I found amusing is I check in, I go through that, I'm like, oh, okay, it makes sense. They have this security. Okay. I leave the next morning, security's gone. And over the next couple of days, I go through it, and in the mornings, it's gone. In the evenings, it's there. Okay. And then I want to say it might have been Saturday night or something. I get stopped by security again. Wants to check the bag. Like, okay, but you weren't here this morning. If I've got something, why wouldn't I just come back in the morning? It's like security theater, right?
Yeah. You kind of need to have it, since Las Vegas is open 24 hours a day, and so is a hotel, you kind of need to have someone here all the time.
If you're not going to have them there all the time, having them there at all makes no sense.
Right.
But in any case.
Well, I mean, it's also security theater because, I mean, like, you may not necessarily realize this from watching this video just because there's no scale. It's just this ambiguous curtain in the back and some undisclosed mugs. But we're big guys. I just went to Jones Beach Theater, and every time I go there, they've got a new restriction. This time, they wouldn't allow chains. So I wear a chain in my wallet, so it doesn't get taken from me because I live in New York. I mean, I spent a lot of time on subways and trains and stuff. You're crowded up against people. It's really easy for your wallet to get lifted out of your pocket. So, also, I ride a motorcycle. Your wallet could fall out of your pocket while you're on the motorcycle. Sometimes things slip out of your pockets. So, there's good reasons to wear a chain. It isn't just that I like wearing dog stuff on my body, But they're telling people they can't wear chains in there. There are women with clothing held together with chains. It is a metal concert. I was like, dude, I had to go back to the car and put the chain away. And I'm like, dude, I don't need that chain. Not having that chain isn't going to stop me from doing. I actually said this to the security guy. I'm like, this is going to stop me from doing something bad. Look at me. I'm as big as you are. I don't need a chain. I mean, are you going to ban all the big people from coming in here? Are you kidding me? I mean, at some point, yeah, I understand if you have a force multiplier or something like a gun. I get that. Or even, a highly weaponized knife. I get little pocket knives. Come on. It's more likely to fold on your finger than it is to fold than it is to stab the person. But like a chain? I have shoelaces. If I'm going to strangle someone with my chain, because that's about the only thing you can do with it, it's just theater. It's like, what is wrong with you people?
If the wise ass in me would want to go back there with like dental floss, a spare shoelace,
just keep going with bigger strings until they reach the limit.
A variety of things. When he says, "Oh, you can't have the chain," like, okay, well, what about the dental floss? Is the shoelace okay?
So this is. I mean, this even happens in software. So people assume that their machines are cared for, and then suddenly they're not. Because
like with the cars, you know, people are like, oh, you know, I mean, they don't even think about the fact that the car's on the internet. But, you know, if you've ever, you know, how Windows or Android, they're probably the two worst ones I've seen about being annoying, saying we need to patch, we need to patch, we need to patch, we need to patch, like being on you to get you to patch. And I mean, you know, like Android, at least as far as T-Mobile is concerned, will not let you not. Eventually, they just say you can't cancel anymore, and they force you to upgrade, which is, of course, always at the most inconvenient time. But I'm not saying don't patch; you should. But you know, people, most of your stuff doesn't do that. You know, and if you're not actively thinking about it, your stuff is hackable. Like, completely. It's just like those cheapo locks in Home Depot. A hacker could just walk right through it across the internet from wherever the hell he is. So anyway, sorry, I kind of ranted a little bit, but I had to get it out there.
So
why Jones Beach? Why?
The other thing that I spent a fair amount of time at, which was a lot of fun, was the Social Engineering Village.
Mm.
And Defcon's Social Engineering Village, they do a contest that actually starts like months out from the event.
Okay.
You have to apply to be in the contest. Mm-hmm. And this year, I think they had 28 applications. They selected 14.
Okay.
What they do if you're selected, they give you a company that you have to do research on, OSINT. And if you're not familiar with OSINT, it stands for Open Source Intelligence, OSINT.
Right.
And
publicly available, not like you could get the source code, but publicly available data.
Right. You're
the other use of open source,
so
which is used a lot in the intelligence world, but it has a slightly different meaning.
So what they do, they give you the target company, and they give you a list of information that you should try to get using OSINT sources.
Mm-hmm.
They apparently have a theme for it. And to kind of bring us back full circle, the theme this year was restaurants. Or more specifically, pizza-based restaurants.
Lovely.
And
for some reason, Chuck E. Cheese popped in mind. Go ahead, keep going.
Well, I will say that I wasn't there for all the calls. I was there for maybe 40% of them.
Right.
But once you do the OSINT, you collect your data, you put it into a report, and then you submit it to the contest organizers. Then you develop a plan, what you're going to do when you make your phone calls. Your pretext that you're going to use, other information, and I guess they approve that, or that wasn't quite clear to me, but they actually started doing something. I don't know if they started this year or if it was started last event. They had coaches, so people who were more experienced in it, including one of the prior year's winners, would each give an hour to the contestants to go over their plan and I guess critique what they were going to do as to how successful it might be and things they might want to consider.
Okay.
Then it comes down...
Sounds like the Hunger Games. You got a coach from a previous winner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then it comes down to the Friday of Defcon. And Defcon officially is Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But the two main days are Friday and Saturday.
Right.
Thursday's got some stuff, but it's not the villages aren't open, and it's a few talks, and you get your badge and things like that. Sunday, the villages tend to be open, but not all of them. And you have a few things going on, and then you have your closing ceremonies at like 2, 3 o'clock.
Okay.
But on Friday, and I assume it's on Friday because that way, if you weren't targeting pizza restaurants, you might be targeting insurance companies, or you might be targeting, I don't know, manufacturers of something. You can call up their head offices and get people who are in the office on a Friday. You're not going to do that on a Saturday.
Right.
So on the Friday,
get high enough up the corporate ladder, nobody's going to be there on a weekend.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So on a
speed dial only.
On a Friday, they start, I think, at 10 in the morning, and they go until 5 in the evening. And each contestant gets 22 minutes, which I found really amusing, considering that that's what News Radio 1010 offers.
So it's one very short news cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you get 22 minutes, and you have to go over your list of phone numbers, and you tell what number you want to call, what number you want to spoof, because they will spoof your number when you're making the call.
Right.
And you give the person answering the phone a pretext as to why you're calling.
Right.
And some people did it. I remember one pretext was he was with IT, and their systems detected an error with their order processing system, and we wanted to help you troubleshoot that before it becomes a major issue, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Other people tried at one point doing like employee surveys, and a lot of times those didn't work because no one wants to take the time to do a survey.
Right.
But if you're IT trying to fix a problem, they'll talk to you. If you're IT trying to determine if your store is suitable for a trial of a new program they want to put in place, they'll talk to you.
Nice.
And so they would call up these places and try to get a collection of information. For example, what web browser they typically used on their Office machine, what version it was, what their Wi-Fi SSID was. They would make note specifically not to ask for the password. I remember at least 2 different people saying, "Yeah, can you tell me your Wi-Fi ID?" And they would follow up with, "Not the password. I just need the ID."
Right.
And if I had to guess, it's because this is supposed to be relatively benign.
Right.
I'm not trying to really get these people into serious trouble.
Right, right.
But
You're just trying to show how close you can get to just
Yeah.
walking right through their security.
one woman called up pretending that she had just gotten hired there, and her mother was concerned about security. Could she just tell her what to expect? You know, do I get a badge?
Oh my
Will
God,
I-
that's badass. Nice.
And the way that this worked fantastically well.
yeah, yeah. I mean, just play the. Nobody wants to mess with a gender card.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, it was
Great
another.
way to have your gonads strung up.
Well, it was another woman who answered the phone. So, it
Well,
was
but
like-
even then.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Still.
And so they go over this all day on Friday.
Yeah.
That took me probably about 20 minutes to get into the room.
All right.
There was a line for that, but once you got in the room, it was fine. And they had people at the door allowing people in periodically. They had people going down the lines, making sure that you weren't blocking exit doors in the line.
So how is this working? So you're in this room. There's all these people there, and there's people making phone calls. Are they broadcasting like the
So
person who's hot at the moment? Are they up on stage and everyone's listening?
what the room looks like is on the left and right side of the room, large screens with projectors putting out a combination slide deck or the camera into a booth, and they have a soundproof booth where the contestant goes into that room to make the calls.
Okay.
So they stick a camera on the person there, and while the person's on the phone, they will put them up on the screens. Occasionally they'll throw a little graphic or amusing little thing up there with them, but
Womp womp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then in the center of the room there's a platform, and they have the 3 judges and essentially the MC host.
Okay.
And after the call, the judges will give a arbitrary score, relatively speaking, of I think 1 to 10 in terms of their performance and what they were able to get and their interactions, and that will get added to their score, and they'll critique them to some extent, saying, I thought what you did there was great. I think you could have done that a little better.
Right. Right.
And and they just cycle through that through the entire day. And the next on Sunday they announce the winner. They tally up all the points. You get points from the calls. You get points from gathering the OSINT. You get points for. They stuck in a random question for everybody, and the random question was. They gave 4 possible options, and they were really weird questions. If the person was able to ask the question, they got points for it.
Okay, so they even managed to fit the question in.
I think they may have had to have it answered. I don't know what the exact rule was.
Oh, okay.
But because I think most people got the questions
Well, if it's weird
answered.
enough, you know, you might end the call just by asking it.
But, like, for example, one of the questions was, do you think a mouse would make a good pet for a giraffe?
How do you justify that question?
And I think the justification was that, oh, my daughter's got this thing she's got for school. You know, what would you say to a question like that?
Nice. Or even a variant of that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But even a variant of that, pretend they're in the room. Pretend like you're talking to the kid.
Yeah.
You know, like a mouse is a pet for a giraffe. What do you think?
Yep.
Yeah, I see that.
And then on Saturday, here's where if you want to try
that's
your
how you
skill,
get people's security questions.
Yeah. On Saturday rather, if you wanted to give it a shot, they had free calls.
Okay.
You would sign up for 5 minutes in the booth, and they would call a random company. I remember they called Ulta. They called Planet Fitness. And they gave people 3 bits of information they had to get. And they were relatively random. They had a pool
Now,
of...
Is this a particular store, or
Yeah.
you could just pick or you had to, like, okay, you need this one on this street in Las Vegas, you know?
And, you know, if you got the information or if they hung up on you, then they would call another place.
Okay.
You had 5 minutes worth of time to get answers to your 3 questions.
Oh, okay, so you had a list you could keep running down if you got hung up on. Okay, cool.
And one guy did something that after he got out, they were like, that was fantastic. Everybody should be doing this. If you're going to compete next year, you should do this.
Yeah.
The guy called up, or when the call went through, the guy identified himself and gave an ID number. Like, you know, my badge number is AB149. By the way, after the call, there may be a short survey, he said. And then he went into asking questions under a pretext. But the idea being, who scamming you is going to give you an ID number and tell you there's a survey afterward?
Everybody hates those things.
Yes, but everybody knows they happen.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that legitimate companies tend to do things like that.
Yeah.
So it bought the guy credibility.
Right. See, well, no, but that's awesome because it's gonna cost that company. When you're having a human interaction, you've only got so much credibility, and then you're gone. And companies are getting people used to the idea and wasting their credibility on their survey strategy. When the truth is, they don't need to ask. I mean, maybe they should baseline it once in a while, but everything asks you for a survey because so few people answer them. They have to basically attack the whole world with it just to get enough answers to get a meaningful amount of data. So it makes me wonder now about the viability of those surveys at all, right? The only. So wait a minute. So here's a question. So I'm curious what you think. I don't know if they talked about this at all, but when they run those surveys, is that really just a way for pissed off customers to expend their energy on the phone with the company after the call goes bad, or are they actually interested in the result? Because if you're pissed off enough, you're gonna go on Twitter and complain about it, and the company looks bad and everybody sees it.
So they didn't cover that, but it's interesting you mentioned that because one of the things that I was really impressed by and really liked when I saw it, they had a wrap up when they announced the winner of. Actually, I think it was right after they announced the winner of the vishing contest, because this is considered voice phishing.
Vishing, okay.
He did a wrap up of all the submissions, showed a couple of the submission videos, and one of the things they did is told you how people got their OSINT.
Okay.
And what people, broadly speaking, what people found in the OSINT. And what was interesting is people got a lot of information off of Reddit, because store managers and such would go onto Reddit complaining about their ordering systems problems, about their point of sale system having issues, and they would name the point of sale system. They would name the ordering system. And when
so maybe they were looking for free tech support.
Or just commiserating with other franchise owners.
Ah, okay, I see. My goddamn McFlurry machine doesn't work.
But because these people would go and complain about it and use terminology, acronyms, abbreviations that were standard to the chain, these people, when they made their calls, could sound better like they worked at the company because they knew what these things were called internally.
Nice.
They weren't just saying, yeah, we detected a problem with your ordering system. They were saying, we detected a problem with ABC ordering system.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, it seems like your long arm on your Epsidic is malfunctioning. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
And these are things that people don't realize, don't think anything of when they're doing it online.
Right.
When the store manager goes and says, hey, I'm having a problem with my ordering system. It's not letting me order what I need to order. And he's naming it and naming the version he's using. And somebody says, oh, you need to upgrade to this version. It's a free exchange of information. It's helpful. It's helping him solve a problem. It's making things better.
Right.
Except that it's out in the public.
Right. Which is, wow. So it's almost like this is an unexplored. Well, maybe if you have good pen testers, it's explored, but an unexplored avenue of being so cheap you're creating vulnerabilities, like not having good. Mm-hmm. So if you have a franchise, most of these big chains are franchises, right? So if you're offering up a franchise to people, even if you make them sign something, if you don't offer them good tech support for relatively cheap or competitively cheap, you're opening up your whole company to get hacked.
One guy, they asked him, the Vischer asked him, your company does your company give you security training? Mm-hmm. And they're like, oh, no, I had to learn that on my own. It made everybody in the audience laugh. By the way, there was no recording there, and you will not find any of that stuff on the videos that Defcon publishes, and that's because Nevada is a two-party state, which basically means that if you're going to record a conversation, both sides need to be aware that it's being recorded.
Oh, do you think they picked that venue for Defcon for that reason?
No. I think they
just got lucky.
Well, no, it's not lucky at all, because you can't record the conversations.
No, but it is lucky, because you never know who's recording, right? If it's so New York is not a two-party state; it's a one-party state. So anytime that two people are interacting, whether it's digitally or on a telephone or in a room, as long as somebody in the room knows there's a recording happening, it's good. It just can't be nobody. It isn't a zero-party state; it's a one-party state. But yeah.
So, I really don't think that played into it. I think they would be happy to record it. However, at the start of every single phone call, the MC basically said, no audio recording, no video recording. Pictures are okay. And pictures, he would actually ask the contestants if they minded if there were pictures taken.
Wow.
Most of them said no problem. A couple said, no, I don't want pictures.
Wow, interesting. What about those guys?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, it sounds amazing. How big was Defcon? Was it like how many rooms were there?
So it used the Caesars Forum Convention Center, which is pretty damn huge. Mm-hmm. It then also
Caesars is big.
Caesars Hotel is across the strip.
Right.
The Caesars Forum Center is on the other side of the giant
I don't know that
wheel that they have.
Okay.
The Ferris wheel.
Okay.
It was basically right there by the Ferris wheel, but it utilized Caesars Forum and 3 other casinos.
What? Wow. Which casinos? You remember?
Harrah's, Link, and Flamingo.
Wow. So, like, Las Vegas is papered with geeks.
Well, you know, a lot of people didn't know what was going on. I ate at a Denny's.
A lot of people usually don't know what's going on.
I ate at a Denny's, and what was funny is I saw people come in there who were definitely going to Defcon.
Mm.
And when I left and paid my check, the guy's like, "Oh, why are you here?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm here for Defcon." "Oh, what's that?" It's like,
it must be another Elvis impersonator conference.
And this was not far. I mean, I actually stayed at a hotel on Flamingo. Off.
Did you ask them if giraffes like mice?
No. But I ended up walking to the area. I was the event itself was not far from the corner of Flamingo and I think it's Las Vegas Boulevard, the Strip. And my hotel was literally across a highway and train tracks on Flamingo.
Okay.
But even though it was relatively close, it was still a 20-minute walk there.
Oh, wow.
And in 105-degree heat, I don't recommend it.
Wow.
I will say it wasn't actually that bad because I was going over...
Were the prices jacked up for this week, or were the usual Vegas prices? Because they're usually pretty affordable.
I would say, well, the hotels were normal Vegas hotel prices, in my opinion. The thing that struck me was if I wanted to eat anything anywhere near the casinos, I was going to spend a small fortune. I mean... I'll go simple. I'll have a egg and cheese sandwich from Dunkin' Donuts. Out here, that's $3. There, it's 10.
Yeah. I mean, some of that. Well, it depends. If you look around, you can find discounts. But yeah, a lot of stuff's really jacked up in Vegas.
Walking around my hotel, and in certain other places, I would like just look at prices there, and I'd be like, okay. I did find a couple of things that I thought were relatively good deals. Meaning they weren't like a complete ripoff compared to everything else. Mm-hmm. They had a cake vending machine. The cake vending machine, you could get a slice of cake.
The cake is a lie.
For $9. I did not get any cake.
Okay.
But if I thought back to what you might pay for a slice of cake going to Cheesecake Factory out here in Long Island, $9? Yeah, okay. It's about what you'd pay.
Yeah. If it's a really good slice of cake, yeah. It's worth it.
Even if it's not. I mean, at Cheesecake Factory, that would be an example of a price for cake.
Yeah.
The other thing is they had a vending machine.
Mm.
Now
I'm hungry for cake. Thanks a lot.
No problem. the
cheesecake.
The vending machine had they had vending machines for soda, and those were $5.
Yeah.
And they had vending machines for snack food, and the snack food vending machines, especially on the casino floor, you could get like a little bag of Cheetos for $2.25.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at first glance, that's expensive. You couldn't quite tell the size, but you could tell the calories. You buy a little bag of Cheetos in a vending machine here, it's 160 calories for $1.50.
Mm-hmm.
You buy it there, it's 320 calories for $2.25. It's actually better priced there.
Oh, okay, cool.
I did get a bag of Cheetos.
Go bigger. Go home. Interesting.
But everything else, I mean, as long as you didn't go to the Strip, if you walked a few blocks away, you could get prices that were more normal.
Right. So if you've never been to Vegas, that's how it works, right? The Strip is the more tourist trappy part, and there's parts of Vegas that are just where normal people live.
They strip your wallet.
Yeah, exactly. If you can walk in the 105-degree heat. So, all right, 2 questions for you. Do you want to? I have a few questions that I forget. We'd be in it for another hour if I asked all the questions I wrote down. But is there anything that you want to talk about that we missed? And then, what kind of question? I'm going to hit you with one more question. Do you want something fun or serious? Do you want something like personal or kind of more generic? And you can talk about. So first of all, what do you want? Is there anything else you want to talk about? And second of all,
No,
what kind of question would you
I'm
want?
good. I'd say go with the fun.
Go with the fun. Okay. So, but so I guess maybe Warren. Here's one of the funnier questions. You can go a lot of places with this. So we had talked briefly about vat meat. You know, meat grown in a vat. If you don't know, Animal 57. If you don't know what I'm talking about. So, and you said that you would. You know, you told me something about vat. What do you think of vat meat? Is that something that you would be willing to do, and why or why not? Or, you know, who would you trust? Where would you buy your vat meat?
So I'm a vegetarian,
Okay.
and it's
I wasn't going to out you. I figured to let you go there with that.
yeah.
You know? People want to see
My choice and reasons for being a vegetarian these days.
Yeah.
Primarily because, in my opinion, I don't need to eat animals to survive, so I'm not going to.
Okay.
Which also means that if you put me in an environment where I have to eat an animal to survive, I will.
Right.
But I don't anticipate being in such an environment anytime soon,
Right.
if ever, so I'm a vegetarian. That said, I have eaten meat when I was much younger, and would I now... like the whole idea behind the artificial actual meat, the vat meat, I don't have a problem with it conceptually.
Right.
I don't think I'd have a problem having it, except that I haven't had meat in 30 plus years, so I don't think I would feel any desire to try it.
Right, right. So philosophically, you're not against it.
No.
So if someone was like, ha ha ha, I just fed you vat meat, you wouldn't be like, oh God, my whole moral compass is astray. You'd just be like, that was tasty, or why'd you do that?
Or I hope I don't get sick because I haven't had meat in 30 years.
Good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I kind of wanted to hear your ethical thought process about, because like, I'm keto, right? So keto is mostly meat. You know, it's not a carnivore diet specifically. There's also veggies and stuff, but you know, like I keep away from all the carbs. Like and it's made me healthier. And I was like, my whole life I've eaten meat, and I've thought about it, and I'm like, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't, but like now I kind of have to. You know, like if I'm not careful, if I get into the carbs too hard, you know, I'm gonna blow up like a balloon. So I'm kind of like, you know, I'm either like on a vegetable diet, you know, a fruit and vegetable diet, or I have to eat meat. I don't have a choice. So it's kind of now that said, I never went there with the ethics, you know, but I was kind of curious about the reason I bring this up is because it's actually the thing that made me think of it is I noticed a story. I rejected it for Dystopia Report, but apparently Italy has just banned vat meat. Like there's you can't grow meat in a lab setting anymore off an animal. You know, as just a tissue.
The whole idea of...
But I think it was a safety thing more than an ethical thing. They were like, we don't trust the companies to not make these poisonous. You know?
It's the whole thing is just such bullshit. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the idea that genetically modified foods or artificially created meat is problematic. Oh, we shouldn't eat that, but oh, let's have red number 5. Yeah, we can put that in everything.
Right.
You know, come on.
Yeah.
You're picking and choosing what you want to say is dangerous.
Right.
And what you want to say, oh, we have to make sure that's okay. And some of the shit that you put in food, look at a slice of American cheese. How many ingredients there can you recognize?
Right. Well, okay, so fair enough, right? And all right, 3 things to say about that. First of all, there is one risk, which is that whenever you have DNA in your system, in your digestive tract, the gene jumping is always a plausible outcome. And the way that works is the genes actually jump into the bacteria in your gut, which everyone has. You can't help it. You know, in fact, your health will spiral without it. So
And the way the bacteria work is when they incorporate the genes of things around them as part of their immune system. So the genes of the things that you're eating will end up in the gene in the DNA of the
That's
bacteria.
been a risk forever.
Oh yeah, it has. Well, the thing is, it's been a risk forever. But if it was totally new genes in said tissue meat, then let's not call it vat meat. Let's be serious about it. So tissue meat.
Like I said, I'm not.
It's just a tissue grown off of an animal.
I'm not a biologist, but again, if it's basically meat that's essentially been cloned from an animal, and cloned and grown, then it to me, I don't see how it's any more dangerous than eating that animal. And
well, that's true. I mean, you have prions in mad cow disease. Mad cow disease.
So I just don't see the issue.
Completely animal, completely species agnostic disease that you can get from
and genetically modified wheat or something that's supposed to be resistant to other things. I mean, again, if you can feed 10 times the people with it,
even 2 times the people with it. Yeah.
And we're okay with feeding what's in American cheese to 5-year-olds.
Right.
I don't see the problem.
Right.
I mean, look, in theory, everything should be tested before it's ever put into a human. The problem is...
Science!
The problem is, how long do you test? Because, just because it's fine today and fine tomorrow and fine in a year... Will it be fine in 20 years? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought mad cow...
Right. How many people are going to die of starvation while we're waiting for the results of this?
Well, there's that, but as I understand mad cow disease, it's the kind of thing where you could have a burger today, and if the burger that you had today is basically the cause of mad cow disease in people, it will be the cause in you in 20 years.
Right.
So...
Or maybe never.
Right. So, it's kind of like you'd have to test food for a few lifetimes before you decided, this is not going to cause a problem in people.
Right.
Or you just cross your fingers and know that it doesn't seem to poison anybody in the next 12 hours, so let's do it.
Right. Well, I guess that it depends on your horizon. And so it's interesting, actually, one of the comments, Errol saying, I'm going to wait for a generation to pass and see what happens to them. And honestly, I think that's valid. And I mean, as long as I think his labeling is... I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's correct. I'm not saying that her risk assessment's accurate. But I'm saying that is valid. I want to wait a whole fucking lifetime till this.
To me...
Let's see how you look at 70, and then we'll decide.
To me, it's valid for an individual to say that for themselves.
Yes.
But to say that we shouldn't be doing it for the entire world because a generation hasn't passed,
right,
and it could solve hunger issues, no, I disagree.
And one of the reasons I'm playing devil's advocate so hard on this is because now I'm going to back you up what you originally said and how it can be ridiculous. You know what it smacks of a little bit? It smacks almost a little bit of cannibals who eat the body parts of people thinking that they're going to gain the attributes of that person, right? It's that kind of a logic. Dude, it's just a mess of protein. Just stick it in your stomach, and you're drowning it in hydrochloric acid. If you're worried, chew more. It's going to, the chemistry in your body is really good at breaking this stuff down. And even if it is dangerous, you may have to do it a few times, quite a few times, before the danger catches up with you. So, if at all, you're not going to, yes, disease is a higher vector, but yeah. Anyway, that was interesting. I hope that wasn't too serious.
No.
I thought that was kind of, I just like saying vat meat, Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Lee. Thank you so much for sharing all that cool information about Defcon. I'm sorry, I was hoping I could go this year, but I couldn't. But maybe next year, we'll see. If I have the money and the time.
When I was going to go to Defcon, I viewed it as a security event with a lot of fun things. And it probably is that, but if you don't go to the talks, it's less of a security event.
It's more of a fun.
It's more of a fun thing.
Like, hey, I want to party with smart geeks.
Hacker Jeopardy is awesome. I highly recommend it.
Awesome.
Just get online early.
get online early for Hacker Jeopardy. You heard it here first. And
bring a beach ball.
And bring a beach ball. Apparently there's beach balls?
Yes. They keep people busy online.
Oh, okay. Beach balls! And on that note, thanks so much for coming on. Thank you, Lee. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Please like, love, and tell people about the show. Let people know. Don't be afraid to throw another one less comment in there. And also subscribe. I mean, that's really important to me. You know, even if it's just a handful of subscribers every show, that lights up my day. That makes it worth all the effort that I put into this. I'm still haven't quit. I think I'm still making great content. I think we're having a good time and coming up with new ideas. And thanks so much for coming back on. This is like what, your third show or fourth? No, including
third individual, I think.
Third individual, fourth with panels. You were on one panel, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll see you guys next week. No guest plan yet, but hey, if you know somebody that you want to see on, even if you don't know them, I'm open to suggestions. Please hit me up. There's plenty of people who have interesting tech backgrounds and probably have something to say on here. And thanks so much for tuning in. Choose wisely. Choose to share. Good night, everyone.